Good evening, everyone. I call to order the December 4th, 2023 business meeting of the Cincinnati Board of Education. We welcome everyone and request everyone in the audience to silence your cell phones and electronic devices. Ms. Wagner, would you please call the roll?
Ms. Bolton?
Present.
Mr. Craig?
Here.
Ms. Jones?
Here.
Dr. Moffitt?
Here.
Mr. Morosky?
Here.
Mrs. Weinberg?
Here.
President Lindy?
Here. Members of the public watching online who wish to speak this evening may do so by clicking the chat button now. That chat feature will be open for your requests for 5 minutes. Please submit your name, your affiliation, your school community, your topic, and your contact information if you would like a direct response to any questions you might have. As folks look at our agenda this evening, they will see at the top of it a section on our goals and guardrails. For people who have not watched or joined a meeting recently, these are the most important student outcome goals on the left and the most important community values that our board has committed to using in holding the administration accountable for results. You should see both in this meeting and in future meetings a real effort to make sure we are spending the majority of our time holding the administration accountable for progress on these student outcome goals and on these values. Item C, every few months, our board, for the last 2 years, has made sure we state in advance the most important priorities that we are trying to move forward. You will see those 3 here. The first I'd already mentioned, which is to continue progress monitoring and accountability. Second, we are well underway with a very important FY25 budget process. And number 3, we're looking forward to hearing some more about this evening, reviewing and deciding on ad hoc committee recommendations. So with those sections behind us, we'll turn now to item D, which is our evening's superintendent's update.
Thank you, President Lindy. So we have 2 brief updates for today. We want to start with a conversation that we have had in the past specific to Clark, and we were asked to come back with recommendations. And so we want to talk specifically about Clark and Gamble Montessori. So the overview is this is an opportunity to revisit Clark and Gamble and how they're handled in the lottery due to a few factors. One, increased interest in secondary Montessori education, specifically at Clark. The second, in no particular order, but in the bullets, a prior commitment that was made with the Hyde Park Community Council regarding Clark's enrollment, and that's at the time that Clark was becoming a Montessori program. The need to ensure schools are not oversubscribed, resulting in overcrowding. The desire to maintain overall Montessori integrity, and the need for advanced clarity for families as they plan for 7th grade, for next year for 7th grade. Next slide. So just a little bit of context in terms of our recent practice, starting with the 22-23 school year, students in North Avondale, Pleasant Ridge, and Sands Montessori began to have automatic acceptance into Clark. That was actually year before last, when they started with, this past year, I'm sorry, when they started with the automatic enrollment into Clark. And students in Dater, Gamble Elementary, and Parker Woods schools began to have automatic acceptance into Gamble. And so what happened with that as a part of the implications, the 7th grade enrollment has risen beyond the ideal capacity for the school, for Clark specifically. Clark is over-enrolled compared to the Hyde Park neighborhood agreement. And while Gamble is not yet over capacity, families are unclear that their residences or their addresses of residence determines whether Clark or Gamble is their school for admission. So just to go back just a little bit, a couple of years ago, there was the expectation given to the administration that the administration would enroll schools in our Montessori programs based on their East or West affiliations. So schools in the East Side were enrolled in one program, and schools on the West were enrolled in the other program. It actually started about 2 years ago. It continued last year as well. And so in looking at that, where we've come to is, and we heard it from more specifically from the Clark families, but we came to an overcrowding situation in Clark that specifically started around the 7th grade. And in looking at what the agreement was with the neighborhood association, continuing at that in that format would not allow us to, one, maintain the agreement that we have with them, nor two, keep the school so that it is within capacity. Next slide. So some history in terms of Clark's 7th grade enrollment history. So Clark is set up to have 135 7th graders entering in terms of the max each year. If we look at starting with the 1920 school year, and that would have been at the beginning of the pandemic, Clark enrolled 130 7th grade students then. The year that the pandemic was still occurring, there were 115. And then 21-22, it went back to 138. It went to 138, which was exceeding the 1920 capacity. In 22-23, it went to 133. And then for the 23-24 school year, with the automatic enrollment, the enrollment went to 160 students. So the process change for enrollment began initially, as I shared, in 21-22 and for the 22-23 school year. The percent of students showing the percent of the 6th grade class in the given year that ultimately went to Clark the following year. So if we look at the second slide, yet the percentage of students from the 3 feeder schools going to Clark is still on the rise. And so if we look at the individual numbers, we have our number of students from North Avondale, Pleasant Ridge, and Sands, and then overall our total. So about 56% of the students that are in the 6th grade at North Avondale, Pleasant Ridge, and Sands this past year enrolled in Clark. The year before, it was 46%. The year before that, right around 46%. So trying to maintain that number in Clark each year, again, causes us the capacity concern. Without a change in practice, Clark will be even more over-enrolled. Currently, the 3 feeder schools have a combined 237 6th grade students. If the matriculation percentage remained at the 56% and did not increase, that would bring in at least 139 7th graders for the 24-25 school year as well. And we saw that it was over 160 for last school year. Next slide. So the 7th grade enrollment at now we're going to Gamble. So Gamble's 7th grade enrollment history, Gamble does not have a set cap like Clark in terms of the agreement with the community. So just important that we reiterate, some of this conversation is coming from the agreement that we have with the community and also the capacity for the building. So when we look at Gamble for 7th grade, the 1920 school year, which was right before COVID, the enrollment was at 125. The year that COVID was occurring, there was an increase that particular year, and most of that year we do know was virtual. And so that was 2021 with 176 students. And then for the last 3 years, we've seen some decline in enrollment. So the 21-22 was 138 students. There was an increase last year that went to 145 students. And then the current school year, there were 105 7th grade students that enrolled in Gamble. Next slide. So the overall proposal for discussion, instead of continuing the automatic admission for Clark and Gamble for the 24-25 enrollment year, CPS will use the lottery process and priorities set by the board in policy 5113.03. Include Clark and Gamble in the lottery process. Essentially, that means that the 6th grade students would complete an application for the lottery process. So still in the East and West in terms of those schools, as long as space is available, but it would not be an automatic enrollment. It would be a application for them, and then from there, determining which students would go to the enrollment process. Cap enrollment for Clark at the 135 students to be able to maintain their overall building capacity and the capacity agreed upon with the Hyde Park Association. Determine acceptance according to the board policy, prior Montessori enrollment, sibling preference, and based on the address of residence, and that is in terms of the east side and the west side. Additionally, host community meetings for all 6 of the elementary Montessori schools to help communicate next steps for families and review the overall process. So some clarifying questions as we've had this conversation with each of the principals in the high schools and the principals in the elementary schools. A few questions have come up, so we want to be able to talk through those questions as well. Does the East and West distinction still apply as the expectation from the board? That answer is yes. A West Side family would initially only have access to Gamble, and an East Side family would only have access to Clark up through the point of that role being filled. So that's really important that we designate, because we understand that there are also agreements about making sure that each student that went through a Montessori program had access to a Montessori program. So if there is space at Gamble and there's not space at Clark, then having the students be able to enroll in Gamble. Do Montessori families still have a guaranteed seat in a Montessori high school? That's starting with the conversation around Clark. The not necessarily part there is enrollment at Clark would be capped at 135 students in order to maintain the integrity, as we've discussed before. And at Clark, and more families have been choosing Clark. So 40% from the 3 feeder schools in 17-18 up to 60% in 22-23. And will the district continue to provide transportation? And the answer for that would be yes, but based on the East and West distinction. So East Side families would get transportation to Clark, and West Side families would get transportation to Gamble. Next slide. So I want to stop here, open up for any questions, concerns, conversations before we look to move forward.
Thank you very much, Superintendent. And is there additional material following this, or this is the last piece of the superintendent's?
On this part, this is the last piece, and then there's the budget update.
Then the budget update. I got it. Great. And so just to restate, you all have a proposal for us. It is in line with the policies that the board's passed in recent years, and you're looking for confirmation that is.
So the change in the East and West automatic enrollment of Clark and Gamble was a protocol or a practice. It was not a policy. The policy 5113.03 actually speaks to the expectations around Montessori, but the decision to do automatic enrollment, as I understand, because that did occur before I got here, but I understand that came from conversations that had happened with the administration. And so the movement for that was to enroll the students in the programs based on East and West.
Got it. And then can we just put up, Rob, the slide that's on the proposal? Board members, comments, questions? Ms. Bolton.
One of the reasons that was an agreement, as a person that was part of that agreement with Hyde Park, is that Hyde Park has more power than the West Side neighborhoods. That's the first thing we have to say. And that's just a reality. It's East Side versus West Side. I'm not sure about the policy piece, because I know I've sat through hours of meetings in policy some years ago about preferences regarding Montessori and sibling, and whether or not you received Montessori outside the district and allowed you to get in, or whether or not you were going to be valued as a Montessorian inside the district and have that guarantee to high school. We spent millions of dollars in purchasing Mercy and making Gamble much more competitive with the already established Clark. So on these questions, I personally think pretty strongly, and I will say this as a person who has, at least in her extended family, a 6th grader ready to go to high school and has spent time in Montessori. And there's actually 2 of them. I think we did, and I heard it again on the campaign trail this past month or 2, that people that went to Montessori elementaries did assume that they would have access and not be like other folks in the lottery. So I applaud the fact that the first administration that has tried to enforce the East-West has been yours. 2 previous administrations got directives from this board to do it and didn't do it. The other piece of it is other folks get to go to Clark if they know the right person. Now that's just the way it is. The other reality is I do not want to betray the trust that our elementary Montessori families have. Not just because I'm personally involved with that, but because I was part of making those promises. And moving forward, being able to adhere to East-West or 3/4 or whatever it's going to be, we have to be firm about doing that. So for these particular questions, I believe that the East-West needs to be maintained. I believe, very frankly, we have to probably strike up another agreement temporarily for 1 year or 2 years with the Clark community and also the Hyde Park community, because I have no interest now in turning away people that have committed their kids to 6 years in Montessori and tell them they can't go to those high schools. So that's where I am on that. The other piece is, we do know that, as you well pointed out, and I appreciated your numbers about the number of kids that would normally go percentage-wise. Some of these folks on the east side will be leaving us. I've understood that there's an increased interest in Spencer. I've heard, too, that some people are leaving us, and also as many as some of these children and young people will choose Walnut. Till we have a better understanding as to what numbers these really represent, I would not want to betray that belief that the families have. And I would also continue to like you to enforce the East-West. And we've made a great deal of money investment to make that happen. And I also think that something that the Clark and Gamble folks have mentioned is that we need to invest in having all of our Montessori teachers properly licensed, properly certificated, and we need to pay for that, and we need to do it at their convenience so that we cannot have this divergence of who's qualified better than the other. So those would be my answers to those initial questions. But no, I can't betray the trust that the families have that they will have dibs and not just enter into a lottery. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bolton. Superintendent, anything there you want to respond to, and then I want to make sure we get other board members.
I do. So just a couple things. Thank you for the feedback. One, the preferences in terms of enrollment don't change. And so the first seats, so to speak, would still go to the students that are in those schools, as is outlined in the expectations for any of our magnet processes in terms of preference. There are no changes to preference. What we do need to get to, however, is we have to have some level of commitment that students are going to actually attend. And so one of the things that's happening, as happened last year, and you all received the concerns from the Clark families around 7th grade, it's not just an issue of the Hyde Park agreement, it's also an issue of space in the building. And so when you walk through the building, you go through the pods, we were able to work through it this year, but having the same number of students come in next year that came in this current year, it would cause there to be an overcrowding situation that we could not accommodate. So what we're looking to do in this space is still maintain the expectations around students in our district first, students that have a Montessori experience, students that have siblings so that there's sibling preference. That's across the board for all of our programs, because we do want to ensure that our students in the district that have committed to the district have the first opportunity to go to the programs in the district that they're looking to go to. However, we do need to know that there is interest in the students going there. And once we get to that 135, so if we look at the number that enrolled this past year, Rob, if you'll go back a few slides, right there. This past year, we had 160 students enroll. We have, in terms of the cap, what we would be able to maintain is 135. So we would then need to have some conversations around that other 25 in terms of whether or not there is another program that they would be interested in, or we see the capacity that we have currently at Gamble, whether they would be interested in going to Gamble. But some of that would start, or if they want to go on a waiting list, to see if other seats open that would allow us to maintain the 135. But that would at least get us to a point where we can get the school, keep the school at a manageable space. That 7th grade group is going to continue to be a larger group as they go through each of the years, but bringing in another group at the same size would be problematic for the school.
Thank you very much, Superintendent. We'll go to Dr. Moffitt, followed by Ms. Jones, followed by Mr. Morawski.
So this is actually some really great stuff that we've kind of sort of talked about in our ad hoc. So this is a nice little preview. But I have a question. and this is very similar to the questions that we've asked in ad hoc. Can you go back, Rob, to the previous slide? Of the 160, how many of those students actually live on the west side that would qualify to go to Gamble, but they choose to go to Clark? Do we know that number?
I don't know that number offhand, but that is information that we could pull. I don't believe in terms of this year that there are as many of those students, but what we found, to Board Member Bolton's point and that question that you're raising, is that is correct. And so we're going to hear some more of that as we move into this year, as we're trying to maintain the boundaries, because we did have principals to share with us that if individuals came to them and they could provide their own transportation, that over the course of the years, they have allowed them to enter. So we are working through processes to make sure that we honor what's been put into expectation.
Thank you. And the other question that I have, I understand that it's not simply about just building capacity, but also the agreement with Hyde Park. Have we engaged the Hyde Park Community Council for their feedback regarding our previous agreement and any community concerns or an extension from that? Have we done any of that engagement?
We have not, and I could let our general counsel speak more to this. One of the things that I would share is, even going back to the 135 for our rising 7th grade students, it would still put us over the course of the years over that 660 number, but it doesn't make it unmanageable for the school. So one of the things that our council has shared with us previously, you know, the Hyde Park community has not necessarily policed us in that area, but we recognize when it comes to trying to do things like add additional space or try to put portables at the school or any of those things, that would then be problematic. So our answer for that instead is to try to right size the school first instead of trying to go back and do something else around those numbers.
So I would love to see some engagement with them on the prevention side, you know, like to say, hey, this is where we are, so that we can educate them, because maybe they could come up with some other creative measures as well. But I do think it warrants, since we do have an agreement with them, to engage that particular community. The other concern that I have is, and as you have shared, that there is not the same credentialing for Clark versus Gamble. So as far as the staff, so I think we need to put a significant investment of funding there to help those staff get their Montessori credentialing. But also, are we clear as to why families are not choosing Gamble, other than the things that we've talked about? So I'm interested in, if a family lives on the west side but they're choosing Clark, why are they choosing Clark? Have we done that engagement?
I think that we have, and I think that it is a rather involved conversation around just our understandings and where we are in terms of the East versus West to start with. I think that begins the first part of the conversation. I think, to your point about the stability of the school, Clark has been a lot more stable over the last years than Gamble has. Understanding the transition that's happened at the school. And I think the third, to be completely honest, as I've also shared with the board before and talked very honestly about, we're still working to get a solid leadership at the school. Right now, we still have an interim principal. And I think that has some impact overall as well. And I think we're beginning to see that in feedback. And so it's more multifaceted than I think I could just address in this part of the conversation, but definitely open to having deeper discussions about it.
Okay, so my thought is just community engagement with regard to the council and the schools. But yeah, thanks.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Dr. Moffitt. Ms. Jones.
I almost forgot what I was going to say. That was a long way for me. Thank you, President Lindy. I just wanted to say that I do support the proposal as it's written, and I agree with both my colleagues on many of the points. I think Dr. Moffitt raised it or made a statement about, or asked a question about why they go. If they live on the west side, they want to go. So just being very honest about that. I think decisions by families are made based on their perception of which school is better. And as we engage families, I think it would behoove us to, do what I heard you say do, is like really engage them and educate them and talk to them about it, in addition to making sure that the school is stable and is ready to take on this kind of thing, new students and what have you. So I just wanted to reiterate the importance of that. And Ms. Bolton alluded to the fact when she said, well, Hyde Park and the power that they have. The power is in the voice. The power is in the voice of the communities. And I don't know if the Gamble community, historically we've had a pretty good relationship and rapport with them. I just think we got to do more to get out there and encourage them to go to that school. So we have to address the public perception about Clark being better or whatever, or Gamble being better, whichever one.
Thank you,
all.
Ms. Jones.
I'm done.
Mr. Moraski.
Thank you, President Lindy. A number of my questions were answered, and I just want to confirm that I understand correctly. I think I do. So the lottery is essentially a weighted lottery, is what
Correct, absolutely.
Good. Just wanted to double check that. And then I will use this opportunity for my semi-annual pitch to look at open enrollment. As I know that doesn't maybe take up a ton of seats at Clark, but I still think it's something to continue to keep on our radar. Do we want to continue to be an open enrollment district? Or as proposed, I think a couple times this year, and maybe even take it up again next year, the possibility of having open enrollment for the Gilligan School, perhaps the digital school that people as far away as Cleveland want to be in now, and closing open enrollment. Again, it may not, take a huge chunk out of the summer, but it would save some spots. And then lastly, to harken back to Miss Melanie Bates, and Ms. Bolton often does this, the need for a third Montessori high school. I know talking about building a new high school, having a new high school next year is not, but just to continue to keep that on the radar. I came from a city and a state that didn't have any public Montessori anything, and I didn't know much about Montessori till I got here. And one thing I've learned is that this city really loves it. That's why we have these conversations. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Moraski. Any other comments, questions? Superintendent, you were going to.
The only thing that I would add as we talk about the differences in the two schools, I do think that when we go back to the demographics of the schools, as we think about the East and West, Gamble is last year and for the 23 school year and the 24 school year, Gamble is a Title I high school. And it is also so Title I alone shares with you the population. So the face of Gamble has changed over the years, and I think that adds some to the perception, which is something that we have to collectively work through as an organization to make sure that our teachers are properly trained across the board, not just Gamble, across all of our Montessori schools. That's really been a challenge for the last several years, as I'm understanding, for staff. So that's one of the things. There's a higher population of free and reduced lunch. There's a higher minority population. The school is a Title I school. And so those things together add to some of that perception that we need to work to change.
Thank you, Superintendent. Vice President Craig, I apologize. I missed you before. And if Mrs. Weinberg wants to get anything in next, we'll do those. So, Mr. Craig and Ms. Weinberg.
So I think you were actually getting ready to hit into one of the things that was on my mind, which is also just we generally have a different population spread out throughout our city. And we've recognized this for a long time, that the population folks who live on one side of our city tend to be even that would take advantage of some of these opportunities is very different than the other. And I think the other thing that's also think about within that is that we're looking at some of the elementary schools already this year that have overpopulated within the elementary school as well. So I don't think this is a problem that will go away simply of our students going in. So I mean, I think that's something we certainly need to think about. In this, I want to say I support a lot of what's in the proposal. I think one of the things I would also probably want to figure out is after we go through all the different priorities that are established with regard to how you would select who gets where, knowing that level of population that's still left to be part of that at-large enrollment number. Because I think that's the other part in some levels that we would be kind of addressing of who's that 25 is coming out of, right? It's out of that that at-large who don't have the other previously priorities. So I think that's the only thing I would maybe add on to it, is just recognizing that this is a bigger conversation in some ways than what we do at each school programming wise, because I think it's just different populations of students and programs that are necessary. But then also, what is that at-large number of students that would be considered in a lottery system.
I think it does allow us to go back to Board Member Moffitt's question about the 160 that were enrolled in Clark. Were they actual students that were on the east side or students that were on the west side? So I think the team has that information where we'll be able to pull that and review it. I think our main thing at this point is making sure that we're able to communicate with the families. They will have a long period of time, almost 2 months, 3 months, to apply for the lottery, but making sure that they're understanding that we are looking at the east and west side to make sure that we are maintaining the integrity of the expectation from the board.
Mrs. Weinberg.
Yes, and just to add, I'm going to say that I agree with everything that my colleagues are saying. If we could get that third high school somehow, I know that that would be very expensive. But in terms of the proposal, what's really important to me, and I heard the superintendent state about hosting those community meetings and making sure that we're being very transparent with our families, because I think that's important. If we're making a change, we have to make sure that we're communicating with them and being very intentional for the next steps for the families.
Thank you. But before we move forward, I think anybody have anything they've not shared that they want to? Yeah, Ms. Bolden.
Yeah, real quickly, part of our issue too is that we determined 3-4 years ago as well to expand PRM. And so PRM has a larger student body and because it's popular and because people have made a commitment to it. So we've kind of added to the problem because of the success of PRM. But we've also tried to deal with it with the purchase of Mercy. I do want to make sure that I understand this. The Montessori families that want to proceed to the high schools on the east and the west, depending upon their address, should list that school as their first choice.
That's correct.
And they will be in there in all likelihood.
They will be there up to the first 135.
Okay, so we're capping it at 135 and turning away the rest of the folks?
We would then look for where we can move the other 25 to. And if they are still wanting Montessori, then we would look at the availability at Gamble.
Because the most diverse system we have and representative system we have is our Montessori system. And if we do things to deplete or discourage the growth of Montessori, we are going to, there are big sociological and economic issues there. The last thing, I thank everybody for saying about a third Montessori high school. It's not that far into the distance, hopefully, but the not having space in Clark, I can today point to 11 schools right now that have more kids in them than they really want to. So to now make special arrangements and cut off expansion of the student body for this school rather than our other schools, again, is an equity issue to me. So again, I appreciate the superintendent's effort on it. She's at least addressed this issue. And there's been 2 previous superintendents that didn't. So I appreciate that, but I really think we're in deep trouble if we turn away 25 families. We've already turned away any number of families from Walnut over the last 3 years.
So thank you, Ms. Bolden. In an effort to keep us moving forward a little bit here, I think we have another part of the superintendent's update and then a wonderful group of speakers tonight, including a large number of students. And I want to make sure that we get some clarity where we need clarity, but that we get our students up here as soon as we can. Here, my question for the board is, I heard a lot of support for this proposal. It could be the case that we have already established that and we can just move straight to the budget presentation in the second part of this. If there's anybody who doesn't support the proposal, I just want to know that and we'll call a vote. Great. Dr. Moffitt.
So I would like to have more information, more. I'm not saying no, I didn't know we needed to really vote on that today. I thought this was awareness, but I kind of wanted to get some more data information.
I think there's a timeliness issue around launching the lottery process. Is that, I could be wrong too, Superintendent?
So there are actually 2 things here. And this is a question that I posed earlier because we've not found it in guidance. So my first question, and I don't think that I've gotten a response to that question yet, was whether or not this proposal required an action from the board. Because the change to automatic enrollment on the east and west was done through administrative direction. It was not done through an action from the board. It was done by guidance because that was what was understood that the board wanted to occur. In terms of this particular proposal, the reason that we're bringing it now, and it is timely, we have delayed our opening of the magnet process. As we're talking about the family, delayed the opening of the magnet process to address this particular issue, understanding that we have some other ad hoc things that may come after that. There is a 3-month opportunity. The magnet window is scheduled to the enrollment, the overall magnet process opening, and that also includes high schools, is scheduled to be open until March. It's either March the 2nd or March the 1st. So that gives a 3-month time period, which gives us some leeway to make sure that we're able to get in front of families. I think what we will find when we dig deeper in, and there are still going to be people that will not be pleased with this. It won't be Clark, but there will be some that will not be pleased, because what we will find when we dig into some of the addresses is that there will be some that are currently enrolled in one school program that should be in another school program, and we are going to plan to enforce for them that they enroll in the Montessori program based on where they live, not based on the school where they're enrolled. That is going to cause some concern. So in terms of thinking about that, which I didn't get a chance to respond to about the difference in the 25 students, once we go back and address the number of the rising 7th grade students, determine that 56%, because that's what actually enrolled in Clark last year. The other students went other places. Determine that 56%, determine which population of those students would then have to apply for Gamble versus Clark. I think that we would see more of an alignment of numbers. But we are in a situation right now where the school year is upon us, and some of the same families that we're talking about, if we're changing things, there are some of them that can make decisions to go other places, even if we don't even have an opportunity for them to begin to apply for where they're looking to go. So to do anything with delay does cause me some concern about preparing for next year.
So let me, go ahead, Dr. Moffitt, and then I want to follow up.
So that was kind of my piece I needed more information because I was wondering about that. We'd spoken ad hoc a little bit about how that looks with grandfathering students that are currently there. I don't hear that. And that was what I was saying. I needed more information because if we're talking about moving students that are currently there and making them go to the other address, which was the impetus for my question, I don't want to support that. I think that I have concerns with uprooting students who are already planted at Clark, particularly because I know how Montessori's go, and then now if we're talking about moving forward, that's one thing. But that was one of the reasons why I asked about the engagement of those families and how many of those families actually live on the west side and why they are choosing Clark. They're already there. So if we're talking about moving forward with an east-west for the current 6th graders, not talking about siblings that already have Montessori experience, et cetera, making them go to their east and or west, that's one thing. But if we're talking about uprooting students that are currently there, I need more information. I don't want to.
I don't think there's an uprooting of students who are already there.
Do you mean uprooting students from Clark? No, this is only about rising students. So any students that are already there at this point, it would not be prudent for us to go into a school that's already existing to try to move those students. The entire conversation now is only about rising 7th graders. And rising 7th graders now and moving forward.
So let's try to do this because I want to make sure that we can get both clarity and people's perspectives and move us forward. Superintendent, the proposal that's on the slide is still what the administration thinks is the recommendation for going forward. Is that right?
That is correct.
Okay. Is there a motion to accept the proposal from the superintendent?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Morosky. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Craig. We've had a lot of discussion on this topic, but is there anything else people want to say before we vote on whether or not to accept the proposal? Ms. Bolton.
Yeah, just very quickly, if I could, this speaking, as the superintendent just said, is for rising It has nothing to do with the current students, because the second part of that did start to sound like that. The other thing is, I would verify to you, as the most senior member here, this is a board decision, enrollment, and I'm sorry we didn't put something in policy that our general counsel could have pointed to. This was moved by the board of the East-West and not enforced by previous administrations. That's why we're in the mess that we're in. So you were right to bring it to the board, because it does indeed deal with enrollment. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bolton. Any other last comments? Ms. Jones?
Yeah, just the last comment to follow up what Ms. Bolden said. I think, and maybe, I don't know if this is an assignment or what it is, but I think it is, I think what should happen if in fact this passes, and we really need to make sure that we are aligned with the policy. I know the superintendent looked at the policy, so the proposal was driven based on what the policy said now, currently.
So the
It is
proposal
aligned.
hasn't changed anything
Right.
from the expectations from the policy.
Okay, okay,
And,
then we're good.
General Counsel, if you want to do anything to verify.
No,
Okay. So then I think let's take a vote. Ms., it may be unanimous. Ms. Wagner, would you call the vote, please?
Bolton?
As it pertains to rising, yes.
Mr. Craig?
Yes.
Ms. Jones?
yes.
Dr. Moffitt?
No.
Mr. Morosky?
Yes.
Mrs. Weinberg?
Yes, as it pertains to rising as well.
President Lindy?
Yes. Okay. Thank you very much. Let's move on to the second part of our update, which is on another, brief, low-stakes item like our budget.
Okay, I think this will be very quick. This is just a brief, I think it will be quick, I really do. But this is just a budget process review going back to our work session that we had together on the Saturday as we're preparing for our 24-25 school year. Next slide. So this is a slide that was shared with you earlier in terms of the phases for the budget process. It's been shared at each one of
Superintendent, let me just interrupt for 1 second. My comment was an effort at some dark humor, not an instruction to feel like you need to rush. So
I
please take your
understand.
time. This is very important, and
I
we'll
do
give it as
understand.
much time as it needs.
I took as such. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so the budget process phases, this was information has been shared with us previously and been shared in the previous presentations. We started with the central budget exploration. We had our board workshop concerning the budget on October the 14th. During that time, we shared that we would take the information that was being shared. We would be as transparent as we possibly could and prepare to do roundtables, much like we did transportation roundtables. That was the example that we gave, and survey at the end in terms of recommendation. In previous meetings, I know it was brought up in finance, and it was brought up as a part, as a part of one of our business meetings, the comment that we needed input and feedback on the budget, that this would not just be a superintendent's budget, but a budget that we received review and feedback on. So since that time, we scheduled we started in November with the roundtable engagement with our union leads and then our district office staff, our principals, and then moved into December through January with multiple sessions being covered for the community and staff. At least one of our board members has already been able to attend, and another couple of board members have shared that they have reviewed the presentation as well. From that, we will work in partnership, as our treasurer and I have, to prepare proposals for the board as we get to board agreement on a path moving forward. Our next steps from there would then be to develop, based on the information that we are provided in terms of how we will balance our budget. We would then prepare school and central budget development together, which may include community engagement, but from the engagement that's occurring as a part of the budget roundtables that we're doing already. So as we're talking about some of this, some questions have come up about the actual survey. The survey is only for feedback. The survey is only to get information from what individuals are thinking and recommendations that they may have that we are then able to take, put into proposals, and bring back to the board. And then from that, our budget proposal shared with the board, and then the movement to budget approval. So that's kind of the timeline that we work with, which does not deviate from what we talked about when we met October the 14th. Next slide. Our roundtable sessions, from doing our feedback sessions and having conversation with principals as well, there were several of them that wanted us to conduct sessions at their school. Unfortunately, there are not enough individuals to go around to conduct individual sessions at schools. However, we have added 3 to 4 additional sessions, three additional sessions, so that we're doing those out in the community where we're encouraging schools, partnering schools together and encouraging them to invite their staff, their parents, so that they can be a part of the discussion. The other thing that's also, that we're also doing is we've done one of the community virtual town halls already around budget, roundtables around budget. The next one is on December the 13th. Where we see community, we left it open for community because we did not want staff to feel that they could only come to a session that said staff. So we left it open so that anybody that wants to come to a session is able to come to a session. So the sessions are here and they're also listed on on our website. Our revised timeline, which will take some additional conversation. If you recall, when we had our meeting on October the 14th, our treasurer and I were both really excited or thinking a little bit faster about trying to get to the point of getting a proposed budget or recommendations or proposals out to you earlier. And it was shared with us that we were trying to do that too quickly, that we needed to back up in terms of trying to get that information. So these are the revisions that we've looked at this point. We have had some conversation with the union around that, but we do know that there is some language that supports when budget information is provided to the union. So we have to make sure that we're working through that process as well. So just wanted to make sure that we were coming back to where we were with this and why we're doing the feedback and the engagement that we're doing. It's only to collect information so that we can then take that, put it into proposals, and provide that information to the board as it is being determined where we go next with our budget. Next slide. That's it. Questions for me?
Thank you, Superintendent. As we do questions from the board, could we put back up that most recent timeline slide?
Yes.
Great. Thank you very much. Questions, comments from board members? Ms. Jones.
I just want to make a comment. I attended the November 29th, somewhere in there, budget roundtable. And I just wanted to say publicly how helpful that was to me, even as a board member. And even though I won't be here in June to approve the budget, I feel very strongly that this budget, you know, the way it's moving forward and the involvement and what I have learned and understood based on that presentation was real helpful to me as a board member. So I am going to sit here and encourage people in our public to attend one of these sessions. Dr. Little presented at that, and the information was very easy to understand. There was extremely strong sharing of information and engaging with people at their tables about this information. And I tuned in. I didn't participate, but I tuned in and was astounded by the level of discussion and the depth in which these folks addressed those the questions that were on here. So I again am going to say again, I encourage people to participate and be a part of the process, because whether you participate or not, a decision is going to be made June. So we'd rather have your input than not.
Thank you, Ms. Jones. Any other comments or questions? Okay, well, let's keep moving. Thank you, Superintendent. Thank you, Treasurer. We're going to move to our next item on our agenda this evening, which is, I believe, our hearing of the public. Each speaker will have 2 minutes and direct all comments to the presiding officer. If you're online, once a request to speak has been granted, you'll be invited to enter. Before I do more of the online instructions, Mr. Hoying or Rob, how many online folks do we have tonight? 1? Okay, so if you are our online guest, thank you. You'll want to click on the camera icon to go interactive. If you would like a direct response to any questions you have, because we don't typically respond during hearing of the public, please provide your name, your affiliation, and your school community, as well as your contact information. This request is consistent with board protocol, and we appreciate your help. In the unusual event that someone is not willing to follow this protocol, we do reserve the right to end that person's time. Again, each speaker will have 2 minutes to speak. When the timer goes off, your time is up. Please refrain from discussing any personnel items. Shared this. I've tried my best to put our speakers tonight in a particular order. What I've tried to do is have students speak first. We're delighted you're here. Want to respect that. Put your voices first, and also recognize it's a school night and you'll have school tomorrow. And so after that, we'll have our other speakers. Is our online, do we know, is our online speaker a student? We don't know. If we can figure that out, let me know. If not, we'll just slide her in at the end of this. Great. Okay, so then we'll have that person go with the adults. And what I'm going to do is read 3 people's names. If all 3 of those people could come down to our podium, I'll then, as we move through people, read the next 3rd person. So if that person can come down, that'll help us get through everybody in a reasonably efficient way. So for our first 3 speakers this evening, we have Audrey Simon, followed by Kira Afanon, followed by Danny Kelly. And then Ms. Simon, you can start whenever you're ready, and you should see a picture of someone's face that you push, and you'll get a red light, which means your mic is on.
Okay, gotcha.
There's a face. It looks like it's got 3 lines coming out of it.
Oh.
Nope, just kidding. We got new mics.
Green light.
We're good. Okay, great. Thank you.
All right.
Hello, my name is Audrey Simon, and I'm currently a junior at Walnut Hills High School. I'm the co-president and co-founder of Sunrise Movement Walnut Hills, a youth-led climate advocacy organization focused on pushing for systemic change to address environmental injustice, namely the issue of climate change. Today, me and my fellow CPS students from diverse walks of life are here to inform CPS of the importance of addressing fossil fuel usage through our proposed renewable energy and electrification resolution. Having been a CPS student my whole life, I have seen CPS take significant steps to become more sustainable. For instance, Robert A. Taft Information Technology High School was the first public high school in the state to receive LEED Platinum certification. And Dana Montessori was the first in the state to receive LEED Gold. But all 66 schools still use much natural gas. Natural gas is mostly methane, and according to the EPA, methane is around 28 times more potent at trapping heat in the atmosphere than CO2. So CPS is still contributing greatly to climate change. Plus, fossil fuels, like natural gas, although seemingly economical in the past, are becoming much less economical as the cost of renewable energy continues to decrease. And with the passage of the Inflation Reduction Act back in August of 2022 being the single largest investment in climate and energy in American history, these prices will only continue to go down. The IRA is designed to lower energy costs, increase clean energy production, and reduce carbon emissions by 40% by 2030. The total estimated investments into energy security and climate change, according to the Joint Committee on Taxation, is $369 billion. A lot of this money is going towards tax credits for renewable energy, as well as subsidies, grants, and loan guarantee programs. And these wonderful incentives have the potential to make the eventual switch to renewables and electrification for CPS fantastically feasible. It's time that CPS takes vital steps to usher in a future where the education of CPS students is fueled by electrified and renewable energy-run schools. It's a bright future and a possible future. Thank you.
Thank you, Audrey. Next we have Kira Afanu, followed by Danny Kelly, followed by Sophia Crum. I apologize if I'm saying any names incorrectly.
Hello, my name is Kira Fanu. I am a junior, a member of Sunrise Movement Walnut Hills, and a leader of Walnut's Green Club. I was diagnosed with asthma at the age of 2. The effect of climate change on our health is real. According to the National Institutes of Health, over 300 million people have asthma. In less than 2 years, this number will rise to 400 million. Wildfire smoke, irregular seasons, and air pollution, including the burning of the same fossil fuels that CPS uses, all contribute to this. The Harvard School of Public Health found that thousands of children younger than 5 die from lung problems associated with climate change. Preschoolers and kindergartners die from climate change. Children die from climate change. I remember my first asthma attack. I was only 4. I collapsed to the ground, completely unable to breathe, but desperately trying to scream for my parents to save me. What would have happened if my parents were not home? If we didn't buy emergency inhaler? Would I be another statistic? Your decision to continue using fossil fuels directly affects the health of your students, teachers, and all other members of CPS. The choices you make when deciding on energy providers will be a determining factor in our health, our lives. CPS needs to turn away from fossil fuels and switch to being electric. This is your chance to protect us. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we have Danny Kelly, followed by Sophia Crum, followed by Sammy Shrine.
Hello, my name is Danny Kelly, and I'm a sophomore at Walnut Hills High School. My friends today will stress the importance of the resolution being passed for many reasons, but I want to remind you the specific impacts of climate change on CPS students. Never mind the fact that climate change will nullify all children's future, and all students won't get the chance to grow old and prosper like many of you did. CPS students in particular are extremely affected, as 40.4% of CPS students are under the federal poverty line, where the effects of climate change will reach them more. We don't even know all of the health effects that students will have in the future due to climate change, living with this for their entire lives. So pushing forward this resolution will not only better the planet for all, but significantly improve the lives of your students. This will set a precedent for other school districts to do the same, and will push the Cincinnati School District above the rest. Thank you for your time and have a great night.
Thank you very much. Next, we have Sophia Crum, followed by Sammy Shrine, followed by Nicole Vandevort.
Hello, my name is Sophie Crum, and I am the co-founding president of Walnut Hills Sunrise Movement. I am a junior at Walnut Hills, and the most impactful class I have ever taken there is AP US History. APUSH is not only a class of dates and individuals, but it is also a clear reminder of what America is, a nation of activists and change makers. I especially loved learning about the reformers in the Gilded Age, the Progressive Era, and the Civil Rights Movement. They are part of who inspired me to speak in front of you today. Due to their brave actions, America has a rich history of peaceful and crucial activism that shines a light on the improvements our country needed to make. And at this moment in history, we must become activists against the climate crisis, for our very lives depend on it. Now is the time to bring the change history has prepared us for. I am a child and thus cannot formulate the laws I need to protect myself from the horrors that lay ahead, but you have the ability to help me by passing our resolution. Think of our legacy and the precipice of choice we stand at. Wouldn't it be amazing for future generations of CPS students to learn in their own history class about the positive impact America's school districts had on their students' futures? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we have Sammy Shrine, followed by Nicole Vandervoort, followed by Rima Garland.
I don't want to see the ugly world anymore. The world where I'm not allowed to live, the world where I'm not safe, the world where my memories get consumed by flames. All I want is for the earth to live again. I want the trees and flowers back. I want the fires gone. I want to be able to live freely as the person I have grown to be. I want to feel as if I actually belong here. My name is Somi Shrive, and I am a junior at Walnut Hills High School. I wrote that poem titled The End of the World back in August, after having heard about the wildfires that had consumed Hawaii. Fossil fuel emissions affect everyone's lives, and they will continue to do so for every generation to come unless we stop now before it's too late. Say yes to a green CPS for the better of our lives and for the better of the earth. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and I apologize about the premature buzzer. Next, we have Nicole Vandervoort, followed by Rima Garland, followed by Nayama Shah.
Hello, My name is Nikki Vandevoort, and I am a proud mom of two, including a Hyde Park school student. I'm also an environmental scientist with 16 years of professional experience and the co-chair of the Greater Cincinnati chapter of the Climate Reality Project. My children are my why for the climate action work that I do. It is with a mixture of profound guilt and exhilarating hope that I pursue decarbonization, energy efficiency, and clean air for our children and communities. Guilt that we didn't make it happen sooner. Indeed, the climate crisis is now, and hope because every ton of emissions avoided, every 1/10 of a degree of global warming averted means lives saved. The slogan of CPS is preparing students for life. And I know that this board does everything in its power to ensure our children are well prepared for their futures. Hope is not lost when it comes to our climate. We know the solutions to solve the climate crisis. I believe the proposed commitment to renewable energy and electrification is a very real way of committing to the quality of their future. The science is clear and loud, and we have the immense opportunity through the benefits of the Inflation Reduction Act and its provisions for direct pay to make sweeping improvements to CPS buildings, equipment, and appliances in a fiscally responsible way. The federal funding opportunities for the next decade come once in about 5 lifetimes. Partners across the city of Cincinnati are mobilizing to help nonprofits, small businesses, and residents understand and take advantage of these economic benefits. CPS can tap into that network of expertise. The time is now. Please commit to the health and well-being of our children and their futures by approving this commitment to renewable energy and electrification. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we have Rima Garland, followed by Niyama Shah, followed by Karis Brock.
Hello. We also have 3 other members of our student council that will be joining, but Rima had something on her heart she wanted to share. Should I get a chair? Let me get a chair. I can pick you up. Okay. Read what you wrote. Hi, my name.
My name is
Rima.
Rima.
Kindergarten.
I am in kindergarten.
I want to say
I want to say
the Jumpy Park
the Jumpy Parker
student
play.
We start
We start every morning with this.
I'm an achiever. I'm an achiever. You can do it. You wrote it.
I'm an achiever, and I was born to win. I'll stick with it through thick and through thin. I'll push forward, and I'll never give in. There's a champion in me, and I was born to win. I love my school. I don't want to change it. Do you have any questions? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we have Niyama Shah, followed by Karis Brock, followed by Jeremiah Gibson.
After hearing her speak, I'm not sure I won't need to say anything. We just need to get all our students here. So I'm a theoretical physicist, a scientist, but I realized in the last many years that just sitting and doing theoretical physics research is not going to solve all our problems. So I started learning about gardening and permaculture, and I'm part of the Green Schoolyard Action Network, and I was so inspired there to be in the roundtable recently with the Green Cincinnati plan, and there was the board member Murdoch was there, and the superintendent Wright was talking about very inspiring things, and the whole partnership that is going on between Green Schoolyards and the Green Cincinnati plan is amazing. And this resolution just seems like an appropriate extension, because we are going to have green schoolyards, but we also need to, the word green should not just stay in the schoolyards. It has to permeate into the whole building, permeate into how kids get to school, and everything needs to be green, and just seems like a very natural extension. So I'm very inspired by the way the roundtable went, and I'm really hopeful that in the same spirit, this resolution will also be passed. And I just want to kind of remind ourselves of what Paul Hawken, the person who was the one who formed the Drawdown Project, who proposed all the solutions to climate change, and also wrote this really amazing book called Regeneration recently. He was talking to some students, and he said, planet Earth is hiring. So I think that's such an inspiring statement, and planet Earth is hiring, and we need to prepare our students for that. This is the first time planet Earth is really hiring, and this is such an opportunity. And now imagine that the students, we are teaching them, hey, learn about climate change, do this to change climate change, and learn about how electrification happens. These are the renewable sources. But then you make them sit in a classroom which is running on air conditioner.
Thank you
or
very
heat.
much.
Yeah, thank you. So I just feel like we really need to do for our students, take them out and teach them in real space.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So next we have Karis Brock, followed by Jeremiah Gibson, followed by Katia Abusane.
Hello, my name is Karis Brock, and I'm in 4th grade at John P. Parker School. Today I'll be talking about the after-school activities we offer. We offer Girl Scouts, choir, and photo club, just to name a few. Photo club and choir and Girl Scouts are my favorite because in Girl Scouts we learn about health and wellness, and as well as in photo club with Miss Garland, we also teach about photo perspective and we like making video promotions for school activities as well. And in choir, we have a concert coming up on December 9th. So we would also like to invite you out to that as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next we have Jeremiah Gibson, followed by Katia Abusnaine, followed by Councilmember Mika Owens.
Hello, my name is Jeremiah Gibson on behalf of John P. Parker's Student Council, and I want to tell everyone about PTSGL programs that our school has to offer. First, let me talk about environmental literacy. At John P. Parker, we have 5 gardens posted around the school. One of these gardens is an outdoor playscape that is made for pre-K to 2nd grade students. This playscape was funded by the Reds Community Fund. We also have recycling programs to keep our neighborhood clean. We made benches out of bottle caps that we donated from the community. The second thing I want to talk about is the trips. This Wednesday, some 4th, 5th, and 6th grade students will be going to the Cuyahoga Valley National Park for a 3-day hands-on STEM experience. We will go on hikes and do some water investigations, and we will even become junior rangers. Then, in May, a week before summer break, and me and our 6th grade students will be going to Canada. How many elementary schools get to go out of the country? The third part of our program is digital literacy. This year, we got a new state-of-the-art STEM lab that was provided in partnership with the Reds Community Fund and GE. Our students are experiencing technology in a new way. Did you know that our Makerspace Club was featured in the Blink Parade last year? As you can see, we are being prepared to change our community and the world in many ways. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, we have Katia Abusnaine, followed by Councilmember Mika Owens, followed by Councilmember Mark Jeffries.
Hello, I'm Katia Abusnaine. I would like to share about my school, John P. Parker. I started at John P. Parker School when I was 7 years old in the second grade. I had one older sister who graduated from John P. Parker 2 years ago, and she really enjoyed it and wished she could come back. At the end of 2022 through 2023 school year, my parents wanted me to go to a private school for my 2023 through 2024 school year. When I transferred, I didn't feel as if it was like my normal school days like I used to have here at John P. Parker School. So we decided we should come back here. I'm currently in the 5th grade and I love it here. I think it was the best decision for me. I am now learning a lot more than I used to in the other school and really enjoy it. Also, a lot of the staff here are very nice, which I believe is an amazing highlight for the school. Our school is clean, big, and very educational, with amazing teachers with at least 5 years of experience. If I were to recommend one of the best schools in Cincinnati, it would 100% be this one. I would also like to state my concern with the district planning on splitting our school in half. It would be a bad decision in my opinion, due to the fact that I have 2 younger brothers in this school, and if they end up needing to switch schools, I would feel worried about them because their ages are 5 and 7. That is the end of my speech. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Next, we've got Councilmember Mika Owens, followed by Councilmember Mark Jeffries, followed by Chris Heckman.
Good evening, distinguished board members, superintendent, families, members of this community, children. You all must be so proud of the students that you are producing. What courage that you demonstrated coming here tonight. I am here to express my full support of the resolution to commit to renewable energy and electrification. While climate change is a real issue, there are real solutions that can be implemented. As a city, this is demonstrated through our Green Cincinnati plan as a roadmap to reducing emissions of greenhouse gases, and flagging in each of our iterations of updating our Green Cincinnati plan that electrification of buildings is a huge opportunity. This is the time for both CPS and the city to work collaboratively on this issue. And let us not forget that climate change impacts our communities disproportionately, specifically Black communities, brown communities, low-income communities. It is equally important that our young people lead on this issue and be out in front, not only as advocates, but also as it relates to the green jobs that are needed right now. The cost of inaction is far too great if we are not thinking strategically around this. So please consider this resolution in your future plans and the ways that you strategically move forward. I will also say how timely it is. As the chairwoman of Climate, Environment, and Infrastructure, we will be talking about the IRA in committee tomorrow at 10 o'clock a.m. in City Hall in Chambers. You are welcome to join us. So board members, CPS administration, families, please come and hear about this enormous opportunity that we all have together. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have next Councilmember Mark Jeffries, followed by Chris Heckman, followed by Ayanna Campbell.
Thank you. First of all, thank you, the young children here, or children, CPS kids who put this resolution together. I'm here obviously as a member of council, also a father of 4 CPS kids. I love the Clark discussion. I sent 2, we graduated 2 from Clark. So really appreciate your attention to that issue. I'm also here to express support. I'm going to give it a little different angle because you've heard all about the reasons why we're in a climate crisis. We all know that. I know you have budget concerns too. But the reality of this moment in time is that this is not just about a climate crisis, but also a budget opportunity. So if you look at Los Angeles, for example, one of the largest school districts in the country, they invested in installed solar on 68 schools. They saved $27 million over 5 years. $27 million over 5 years. So yes, and they also generated 21.3 megawatts per year, et cetera. But they actually saved $27 million over 5 years. Massive amount. CPS spends $10 million a year on renewable energy. Obviously requires upfront investment, but does it? Not necessarily. The Inflation Reduction Act, EPA just issued a $5 billion grant. I'm on the city's representative on OKI board. I'm on the steering team for this. It requires zero local match, zero. So we're in the beginning stages of, okay, what does this investment look like? And we've had several conversations with the city and the superintendent, et cetera. But the paradigm of, yes, this is great, we can have those savings in climate, but we're gonna have to invest all this money, not necessarily. So I would think about a paradigm shift. It doesn't have to be that way. These IRA investments, you can get up to a 70% cash rebate, i.e. money back. And there is often no local match. So I think it's an opportunity for us as a city to work together on this going forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have next Chris Heckman, followed by Ayanna Campbell, followed by Jamie Donaldson.
Hello, my name is Chris Heckman. I'm a volunteer with Citizens Climate Lobby, which has been working with the students at Walnut and Spencer also. I'm really super happy that they shared all the great information you just heard. There's much better speakers than I am at sharing that kind of stuff. I have two kids in CPS, Otto and Flora. I know they want me to share their names. I'm here for them. And when I'm thinking about this crisis, I often feel like I'm trying to navigate an overwhelming mess that affects people and communities that I love, but for which I am also learning the ways that I participate in that harm. And I know that you all have other issues that you care deeply about that require such awareness and intentionality to change, and this is very much all the same. So I greatly appreciate the opportunity to ask you to support our resolution for renewable energy and electrification of all the needs CPS has for running the district. It's very practical. The money is there because of actions that Congress, for God's sakes, has taken. I mean, we're really behind the ball, and this will lead to cleaner air for our communities, protecting students' health. We all agree that these are good things, lower energy bills, and I'm just proud again of all the students sharing information in a much better way. So thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Next, we have Ayanna Campbell, followed by Jamie Donaldson, followed by Jamie Blessing.
Hello, everyone. I'm actually quite ashamed to say that I am a parent, and this is the first time that I have ever attended a board meeting. I've never even watched it online. So any parents, students, residents, I encourage you to attend a board meeting, as it is important and it is needed for our future, for our kids. Okay, with that, I'd like to start off with a quote from Superintendent Ms. Wright. It will be prudent for us to go in and uproot students who are already thriving in the school setting. However, you are going to do just that to John P. Parker, a 4-star rating school, next year. You are going to rip students who are currently enrolled at John P. Parker to attend recently purchased Bramble School from CPS for $5 million for grades 2 through 3 to have them reapply to John P. Parker or find another school for grades 4 and higher. With the recent and current gentrification that has taken place in Madisonville, why are you trying to gentrify a school and uproot students who are already thriving in the school setting? That's all I have to say.
Thank you very much. Next, we have Jamie Blessing. Excuse me, we have Jamie Donaldson, followed by Jamie Blessing, followed by Kate Botos.
Hello, I'm Jamie Donaldson, and I am a granddaughter of a CPS teacher, a daughter of a CPS teacher. I worked for CPS I graduated from CPS. I worked for CPS for 17 years, and I have 3 kids that graduated from CPS, and I have 2 enrolled in John P. Parker. So I have a history. And with that, I just want to say that I was very pleasantly surprised when I ended up being at John P. Parker, and it's not broken. It doesn't need to be fixed. So I encourage you to allow the program to stay as it is. And I recently got to see some woodworkers, and I have a point for this, okay? I have some woodworkers, and one was just lopping off the wood, making something, making it shape, right? The other one looked at the wood and said, "Oh, I see the grains in it, and I can create something out of it." They looked at the pattern, and you could see that they had intentionally made something artistic out of it. And I say that to you because I believe that the best solution really is for Bramble or something to be a middle school or a junior high school, so that the teachers and the parents and the kids can find that wood grain within themselves to craft something beautiful. And so that CPS can work together to make something beautiful out of it. Students in that time which students are developing exponentially in, physically, emotionally, spiritually, socially, etc., that this is a time where that energy can be harnessed in a school that is focusing on the craftsmanship and the grains, the wood grains in those students in that period of time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we have Jamie Blessing, followed by Kate Bottas, followed by our online speaker.
Good evening. Regarding the possible changes at John P. Parker School, I hope you'll do more than simply hear what we have to say, but you'll listen with open ears and empathetic minds. First, many families rely on their older children to help their younger siblings get to and from school safely. That includes our walkers and our bus riders. By dividing the primary and intermediate grades, you would also divide these families. Parents who rely on their older children will no longer be able to do so. Instead, they'd be forced to find before or after school childcare for their younger students. Not only would that be an inconvenience, but it would also put financial strain on families, especially with the ending of the pandemic era childcare funding that resulted in many people losing childcare vouchers. Additionally, let's think about our preschool learners. If families rely on their older students to help their preschoolers get to and from school safety, what will they do if their kids are not in the same building? Well, they'll be forced to pay for childcare as well, and at a time when people have lost childcare funding. If a family can't secure or pay for childcare, then they're not going to be able to send their kids to preschool, and sadly, those kids are already going to be behind when they start kindergarten. Now, what about our families that take their learners to and from school? How will this division impact them? I imagine it would be extremely difficult to take students to two different buildings, pick them up from two different buildings, all while trying to get to and from work on time. This could negatively impact both schools' attendance rates and performance if learners are frequently late. I realize the district has already purchased the Bramble building, so they have to do something with it, but that doesn't mean that anything has to or should change at John P. Parker School. To change our school would be detrimental to the community, and it could result in the loss of one of the few four-star schools in our district. I came to John P. Parker as a student teacher nearly 9 years ago, and the staff at John P. Parker have worked so diligently to build a successful program and a strong community and culture. It's truly my second home. You cannot restructure our school and expect the same culture and the same performance that we currently have. The math is simple. You can't divide success in hopes of duplicating it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next, we have Kate Bottas, followed by our online speaker, followed by CFD President Julie Sellers.
Hi, I'm Kate Bottas. I'm wearing 3 hats. First, as JPP's PTS Shell President, I know that we are facing a significant deficit in the CPS budget to the tune of almost $90 million. I want the district to know that we continue, for those young people out there, to do our part with our small island of solar panels. Thank you very much to the Reds Community Makeover. But I need CPS administration to hear me when I say that as a school community, we have made leaps and bounds in cultivating the school family without the additional $5K per student additional funding that many of our similarly successful schools appreciate. And we continue to pour into our JPP family with all the resources available, as we so often, our community partners in PTS Shell are helping to fill some of the most basic of needs for our students and families. No child should ever miss an educational experience or opportunity because of means or the money aren't there. As the education chair for the Madisonville Community Council, I've talked with students, teachers, parents, and alumni over the course of the last several years. We have a unique task of providing support to all of our educational entities. In the past 10 days alone, we have been tasked with providing volunteer opportunities to our Schroeder seniors in February 2024, writing recommendation letters for our summer school volunteers that are applying for employment at Camp Ernst, signing off on Clark's student service hours. In addition, we are currently looking for community support in filling student needs for our young people at the Lighthouse School, all while fielding questions and concerns about the proposal that we're tasked with today. Thoughtful and strategic cultivation needs to occur. We have a very unique opportunity in Madisonville. We have 3 potentially great schools that can go into a feeder system, a pre-K through 6 with John P. Parker, a potential 7th and 8th with the Bramble Building, and then Schroeder going into 9 through 12. This has a potential to create the next generations of community-focused Cincinnatians working to lift up Madisonville and the city and the state as a whole. The third hat I wear is the parent. That's my kid, somewhere. I think of Parker and I think of the fact that we looked at 9 different schools and we looked at generational wealth building. And she's a 4th generational farmer because of Parker. She's a 4th generational musician because of Parker, among other things. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have next our online speaker, followed by CFT President Julie Sellers.
Yes, online is Tracy Linville. Go ahead, Ms. Linville.
Hello, I am also a staff member at John P. Parker Elementary. I want to thank the board for their direction and CPS leadership for finally coming and hosting a question and answer meeting at John P. Parker last week. I don't know if the board is aware, but we had standing room only in our 300+ capacity cafeteria, and we had 200 speakers online, viewers online watching live. And astoundingly, we heard the same things that our students and our parents have said today. The parents there want John P. Parker to stay as a small community school where their whole family can attend. There's multiple reasons for this, not only the transportation issue, but also we have a lot of children who experience trauma, and having the families there from preschool to 6th grade affords for those students to form those contacts with those teachers and keep those contacts and feel safe in their environment, where sometimes they don't feel safe outside of school. So we just ask that you please go back and watch the live if you have not done that. Please also take the time to read through the parent feedback forms that John P. Parker had available for our parents to write. I believe they were all emailed to every member of the board. And consider carefully your choices for the Madisonville community. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our last speaker this evening is Cincinnati Federation of Teachers President Julie Sellers. For folks who are not often watching our board meetings, the contract between the Cincinnati Federation of Teachers and the district grants the CFT president the right to speak at any meetings. And there is a tradition of that time being both at the end of the hearing of the public and without the 2-minute time limit.
Good evening, members of the board. First, I would like to thank the people about having the more sustainable energy and cutting down on the fossil fuel. I know that CFT and AFL-CIO presented a proposal to do this and put the roofs that were more sustainable about 8 years ago. We would have saved millions and millions of dollars by now if we would have done that. And it was a special grant at that time also. So don't let this time, let it get away from you. What I want to do is tonight, we noticed that while reviewing the budget roundtable, the PowerPoint in our recording, that the district wants to develop a $65 to $95 million budget gap. And in order to do this, there is discussion about many cuts across the district that will have a tremendous impact on class sizes and the learning environments for our students.
The first thing that I want to address is increasing the class size might save the district money, but it is counterproductive to the goals that they stated on slide 5 of their presentation, specifically goals 1 and 3, especially if class sizes go up in the lower grades. K-3 teachers are dealing with more and more erratic behaviors than ever before, and from that age group of students, it seems like it is those kids experience more traumas during COVID. Many of our students come to school for the first time with gaps because of the difficulties their families face. For example, lack of experience with books, computers, and structured settings sometimes contribute to this. The gaps start at the lower grades, and if the class sizes increase, it will only increase the achievement gap for kids as they get older. I have documentation from 1999 and 2000 where the voters voted to reduce class sizes. We are still voting on that levy. That levy has never expired and it has been renewed. We made a commitment to the people of Cincinnati to keep our class sizes lower. If you go to any private or parochial school in the city, state, or country, the thing that they always emphasize is the smaller class sizes. Now we're talking about increasing class sizes. Based on the information in this presentation, the budget will not reflect the strategic plan that they state on slide 7. It looks good on paper, but in reality, many of your proposals will make things worse regardless of how they look on paper. They're blaming the district, and the treasurer is blaming the loss of ESSER dollars on the need to make cuts. Slide 34, they list items that will be hard to keep because of the loss of ESSER dollars. Our question is, what did the budget look like before ESSER dollars? Many of these proposed cuts were in the district prior to the ESSER dollars coming in. It would be helpful to compare the 2019-2020 budget then with what the budget might look like in the 24-25 school year. One of the biggest, this is what worries us the most, is that as general fund expenses were moved over to ESSER dollars, that should have been that the general fund should have been increasing so we did not have a deficit. While they moved dollars over, they were still spending and lowering what those carryover dollars were, which that does not make any sense to us. Some of the things on the list are like the APs of culture. That was only for during COVID, and now that should be one of the first things cut. A strong ILT that works with the staff and administration, they can and should be able to have a positive school culture. That's how you build it, not by an individual. They only came into positions through the ESSER dollars. And there was in the budget, it talked about cutting super subs and rely more on daily subs. Where is the district going to find daily subs? They don't exist. Super subs, or better known as building subs, become familiar with the school, the master schedule, students, and other staff, so that the school has greater academic success and stability within their school day. Many times subs that pick up as a daily sub, but then they drop it the day before or the day of, and the classroom is left without anyone in that class covering. It is also a fantasy to expect more daily subs. If these decisions to cut super subs are being made by central office, they are not decisions in what is best practices for our students. The savings to remove the super subs is not that great because the difference between a daily sub and a super sub is only about $26 a day, and that difference is minimal when you know that you can count on somebody who's going to be there every day. Similar to the daily subs, they show on slide 36 and 38, they will increase paraprofessionals if class sizes increase. Again, where is the district going to find people to fill these positions? We have positions that remain vacant from year to year and are never filled. Throughout the district, we have been short on paras for years, and that increase in paras would only be for K-6. If they increase class sizes in 7 and 8, We will not get the paras. Just look at the number of overloaded classrooms and the superintendent's recommendations today. Today, you are voting on pages of overloads. There's 312 teachers in overloads currently this year at this time. This is because we are currently understaffed, and it is totally unacceptable to have so many students in overloaded classrooms. That's not productive for anyone. We should be aware of how they're looking at class sizes, because their starting point, according to the presentation, is maximum amount with the overload, with paras and overload pay. And it actually looks like those numbers are wrong to begin with. The class size numbers are inflated based on even our contract. I mean, the people from this city voted to reduce class sizes. We know that is what makes a difference. But if overload kicks in with the 29 students, it seems like it's going to create a problem in every school. Number one, through the facility master plan, the size of our classrooms are for 24 to 26 students. We don't have enough furniture in classrooms for class sizes to increase. They did not buy and purchase furniture for larger class sizes. For the big ticket reductions, we're interested in what the district means by special ed staffing. They acknowledge on slide 15 that special ed and English learner populations are going up, but yet they're stating that special ed staffing is one of the items that could be big ticket reductions. Seems counterproductive, unless they're planning on cutting some of the Department of Student Services managers. That would seem to be little value to the district and little savings. We believe that the walking radius, there's talk about increasing that to 2 miles, but we believe that the walking radius could be increased, but not to 2 miles. I taught kindergarten, and I know parents walk their kids to school. Young children usually have young parents who may not have a car or a reliable car, and they have to walk their children to school because our streets are dangerous. They're dangerous to walk on. They're dangerous to cross. The city's not doing anything to help us with the crossing guards or funding them like they have in the past. And so if I am a parent and I don't have a car, I could have to walk my children to school, 2 miles to school, and then walk home 2 miles. And then at the end of the day, I have to walk 2 miles to pick them up and 2 miles back. Mike, they'll be in competition with you walking 8 miles a day just to take their kids to school. So I think that we really have to really think about this. But what our biggest question is, how can we as a district tout the ABCs, and yet that's the whole platform, but we're suggesting cuts that will directly impact this? What about all the money that we used that was replaced by ESSER? Where did the general fund money go? We never get an answer on that, even at any of the finance committees. We have been to finance committees, we watched them, and there's never seems to be an answer. The treasurers offered no reduction in contracts. There's tons of contracts out there, no central office cuts, and we believe that a lot of the math is just wrong. Even if we eliminate all the super subs, we're not going to save $4 million. There's not enough cuts in the schools to balance the budget and make $85 million in cuts. How can we trust any of the math? What about all the non-direct student positions like the APs of culture? But yet, when we look at this, we feel like in that program, it seemed as if they were saying that the union is the impediment to their flexibility. What we say is, thank God we have a union contract to protect the learning conditions of our students. So we just have one more question. We have a treasurer who is certified and highly qualified, but yet how did the general funds decrease as we shifted prior general fund items to the ESSER dollars? It is irresponsible that the district has created this cliff, and now it will negatively impact our students and our frontline educators, and it will make people think about maybe going to another district instead of staying here. So there's a lot that we have to talk about. I think there's a lot that is needs to be addressed, but I don't believe that the way that they are asking through the survey are the right questions, because they're telling people where we should be making those cuts, and they are saying, should we cut security? Should we cut custodian? Should we cut para? Should we cut clerical? All those things are necessary to run a school. We can't cut any of them, but yet, how are we going to balance our budget? So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And thank you to all of our speakers this evening. Thank you to our students and our community members, our union leadership. I think in a minute, we'll move on to our next item on the agenda. I think Mr. Morawski had a question about possibly moving up the board matters item because it is timely for the children or the students who are here and because it is brief. Is that right?
Yeah, no, it is intended to be brief, but yeah, all the young people who came for the same reason you had them go first, because the board matters item that I asked to be on here is regarding the resolution. So, and I'm not asking to, like, approve a 3-page resolution tonight. Just to kind of introduce it and see.
Yeah. So, is there any objection to having that board matters item discussion now while the students are here, knowing that it will be brief, and then carrying on with the rest of our agenda? Hearing no objections, Mr. Morawski, floor is yours.
Thank you so much, President Lindy and my colleagues, Superintendent and Treasurer, for allowing us to move this up a little bit, and certainly thanks to the students and the adults working with them for bringing this to my attention, and I know Ms. Weinberg's as well. This is colleagues who have been with me for a few years now, namely probably Ms. Jones and Ms. Bolton. Remember, we've talked about kind of climate change commitments or to the children's future. Not surprisingly, Mr. Heckman was a part of those as well. This one struck me, if I may, as having more teeth and giving some sort of direction in the future, not just we think this is an issue that matters, but we think this is an issue that matters and we will commit to do something. As I have relayed to some of the folks who have been advocating for this, and again, if I may, as policy chair of this district for the past 4 years, and having become quite familiar with resolutions, this is really good. You all did a really good job. But knowing full well that there are things in here that ask for investments, like Mr. Jeffrey, Councilman Jeffrey said, you know, a lot of these investments are going to save money, but as we've just discussed and heard from President Sellers, talking about making investments right now may not be as feasible as we would like, or at least to the extent we would like. So what I was kind of hoping for tonight is to show this to everybody in public. This is the first time a lot of these folks have seen this, and again, appreciate you all lending your support. To lend my support for it, and for 3 primary reasons, and then to see if this was something the board wanted to investigate. I think a win tonight, speaking for myself, and I'll ask Ms. Weinberg if she wants to share anything, but a win tonight would be to get this to the administration and general counsel to look at, see what they think, what is feasible in here, what makes sense, and then at policy committee in January or February, have it on the agenda to discuss. I don't know if I'll be chair next year. If I am, it'll be January 19th at 9 a.m. If I'm not chair, the new chair can help pick the new dates. But that's kind of just what I was looking for to see. So see, A, is there buy-in from colleagues, and B, then get it to the folks in our administration who are certainly smarter than me, at least, to see if this is feasible, what could be done to make this something possible. And the only editorial comment I would like to add is, for me, what I like about this is it gives us something to rally around for kids. We know that better air quality, I too have asthma, better air quality increases learning, it decreases discipline infractions. We know these things, these are facts. There's money available. The IRA is an unfortunate acronym, but thanks to the IRA, we have money available. And then every time that was said tonight, I was like, okay. And then we have support from the city, and we heard from 2 council members tonight. And to the best of my knowledge, in the 6 years I've been in this board, I have not had anyone from city council come here and tell us they wanted to help us do something, especially as it's regarding money and doing really great things. Not to say that they don't want to help our kids, but that's the first time that's happened. So for those reasons and more, I would propose that during assignments, I would assign this to administration, but I wanted to make sure my colleagues were into it, and then kick it to Ms. Weinberg for any additional commentary.
Yes, thank you, Board Member Morosky. And I just want to thank all of the students who obviously came and, voiced their opinions and voiced how important this, would be for the district moving forward. I would just definitely say that I would be in support of this. Obviously, I'm interested to hear what my colleagues think, and obviously I'm interested to hear what our general counsel thinks about this great resolution that was written. And I just want to thank you all for your time and your efforts, and I look forward to seeing where this will go.
Thank you, Mrs. Weinberg, and thank you, Mr. Morosky. So the proposal is to take this draft and assign it to the policy committee and to the administration to work through in January, because I think that, there's a lot of good intention, a lot of excitement, a lot of enthusiasm, and a lot of work to do to check and examine and make some recommendations. Are there any concerns or dissent from assigning this for further research?
I think further research is great. I think the question is for administration.
I think for administration, also for board members, but I think you should.
I'll wait for.
You should. Okay. So any concerns? I'm not hearing any, but any other concerns or questions from board? Ms. Bolton?
I have no concerns, but I would say that we've already sort of committed ourselves to this in our forecast that we passed just a month and a half ago, when we said among these other attributes, that's commitment to green sustainability. We've made a commitment within our strategic plan and forecast to do this. Whether or not we can do this, at what rate we can do it, at what expense we can do it, but it also starts to guarantee that in order for us to be able to do it, we probably will have to go back to the public and ask for additional monies eventually. And I think that's well worth it. So we're proud of what we did in the facilities master plan, but you're right. I wish we'd been able to push that forward and kept that energy going, no pun intended. But thanks for bringing this to our attention.
Thank you, Ms. Bolton. Ms. Jones?
Yes, I agree with Board Member Bolton. I think that this is a very well-written resolution. I don't know how much the policy committee will change about it. That the only concern that I have about it is the details regarding the following actions. And I think I would suggest just kind of working through that, because what we want to do, as Ms. Bolton said, it's in our forecast, but we want to make sure that in the resolution, we're not sort of committing to things that we definitely can't fund or anything. So that's all. But I think otherwise I support it.
Anybody who hasn't gone yet? But then Mr. Morosky, and I want to hear from give the superintendent and treasurer a chance to respond to.
No, I was just going to put a fine point on what Ms. Jones was saying. That was part of the reason I wanted to have administration look it over, and then because typically, resolution or would not be quite as prescriptive perhaps, but I do think it is a good outline that belongs somewhere. Yes. And so, yeah, I think that's why I go into that committee, and then obviously it'll end up in finance. And if all of this sounds boring and like it's going to take a long time, it is. But this process is worth it, and it works, and we do it in public, and we can only do it with you. So you got to keep coming back, okay? And we'll try to get this stuff done early so you can go home. That's our promise to you. But that's all I wanted to add.
Superintendent?
I definitely support us working through this with partnership through the administration and the policy committee. I would ask that we focus with the same timeline that Board Member Morosky shared earlier, just to give us a little more time. January is a quick turnaround for us, and there are some of the areas that are pretty specific. So looking at a January, February, somewhere within that time frame, because we would like to make sure that staff is able to kind of go through and cross-reference some of the specifics that are included in terms of commitment.
I can give you the February policy day too, if I'm chairing it. But
Thank you, Mr. Morosky. Thank you, Superintendent. Thank you, everyone. I think absent any other discussion here, we're going to keep ourselves moving because we've got a number of other things to talk about this evening. Everyone is welcome to stay, but we're going to move on to the next item on our agenda, which is item F, approval of minutes. Treasurer Wagner, before I ask for a motion to adopt these, do you want to say anything about the audit?
Yeah, so several months ago, we realized that there was a gap in standard practice in producing the audits, and we found several errors. And so we've asked Ms. Bruckner to go back and review and audit and correct while we're retraining a new staff member. And so this is a readoption of minutes that were adopted, but they were found to have errors in them. And so we're asking for a readopted of the corrections.
Thank you, Treasurer Wagner. Let me get a motion in a second, then we can have any discussion on the motion. Is there a motion to adopt the meetings listed under minutes audit? And I include there both. Actually, so Ms. Wagner, is the audit just the first paragraph, and then the second paragraph is different, or are both paragraphs part of the audit?
So the minutes that say minutes audit, are those the ones that are being reviewed from where the errors started? The second one are executive session meetings.
I gotcha. So is there a motion to adopt both paragraphs, and then we can have any discussion that we need to have?
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Jones. Is there a second?
Second.
Great. Any discussion or questions for the treasurer or her team about the minutes? Dr. Moffitt?
So I just would like to say, I brought this to the attention of Treasurer Wagner, who immediately, because there were some omissions, and she immediately assembled a task force to kind of work on this. So thank you specifically to our board admin, Pat Bruckner, because she did do a lot of work in going back in, helping to kind of make sure that everything was legally how it needed to be, and that the things that were omitted were actually up to date. So thank you so much to the team for all that they did to make sure that these 7 minutes have been corrected.
Thank you very much. Any other comments or questions? Ms. Bolton?
Question for the treasurer, are there other ones that need to be worked through? And then will they, if so, will they just come back kind of in this grouping, or how what's the future look like?
I think there's more to be reviewed. I will double check and come up with a schedule for you in the next meeting.
Great, thank you.
Yes.
Any other comments or questions? Hearing none, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, minutes are approved. For our committee reports this evening, we have a couple committees with multiple reports. And so I was going to request if Member Jones is willing to do both of the committee of the whole reports, and then following Member Jones, if Member Moffitt would be willing to do both of the ad hoc reports, then we'll move on to policy and then on to budget. Ms. Jones.
Yes, thank you. I'd like to present the Student Achievement Committee of the Whole meeting minutes held on November 1st. The full presentation is on board docs. A copy of this is in board docs, so the public can look at it at their leisure, because I will not go into a whole lot of detail, but just highlighting the content of this meeting. The superintendent reviewed with the board the progress monitoring goals and guardrails, and specifically goal 1, which was 3rd grade reading. And she provided an update on the interim guardrail, or the interim goals on that. And I won't go into all of that. She also did the goal for 6th grade reading equity at the beginning of year data, offered a great deal of information regarding that as part of the interim goals. And then she presented the guardrail number 4 around equitable resourcing, the fall update. Okay, I'm sorry, I lost track where I was. And also presented the interim data. Now, I'm just really highlighting just the things that she presented. I will say that this was good information. I didn't think there was also guardrail 5, chronic absenteeism. I don't want to say that. I don't want to miss that. So sorry about that. But, and then a little discussion on the school calendar. But I will say, relative to those highlighted areas, that there was some pretty robust discussion amongst the board about each of these sections. And as you all know, in following our goals and guardrails, there's lots of work that we have to do. And I think board members are asking these questions so that we can be as informed as possible to ask the right questions and make the most sensible decisions that help drive some of the planning around this. So we really appreciate the opportunity to have the data. There were lots of questions about the data, including asking for clarification around some of the more specific things. So we look forward to having a report on the goals and guardrails specific to these topics in the near future. So I will present these minutes as written and hope for the board's approval.
Thank you, Ms. Jones. Keep going.
The second report of student achievement, or the meeting held on November 15th, it's pretty much the same type of presentation where the superintendent presented on progress monitoring for goals and guardrails. She presented goal 3, which was around Algebra 1, the percentage of first-time Algebra 1 test takers proficient on the Ohio end-of-course exam, and the measures around that. So she gave us some information or updates on the interim goals around that. The next goal was, it wasn't a goal, it was a guardrail, sorry. Guardrail 6, which was around community partnerships. And she provided us information specifically around the measures for the LSDMCs, making sure that those are being developed at all schools. And then the board had a discussion about Cincinnati Preschool Promise Master Agreement discussion, pretty in depth. But like the first one, like the first report, there was lots and lots of discussion about the data with questions. I think this was a good start of our progress monitoring sequence. We're generating, not we, but the administration is generating a lot of data, which the board can look at and reflect and ask questions that help guide where we want to go with these goals and guardrails. So the discussion on Preschool Promise was pretty meaty, and I would encourage you to read or watch the meeting online. And also there is a meeting tomorrow. So I won't comment on that with Preschool Promise because I know that's on the agenda. Okay, so, and then we recessed into executive session. So I present these minutes as written and hope for your approval.
Thank you very much, Ms. Jones. Any questions or clarifications on the committee of the whole reports? Great, so we'll move on. Dr. Moffitt, would you be willing to present both of the ad hoc committee reports, please?
Sure. For the November ad hoc meeting and the November 16th ad hoc meeting, I think that's the only one that's listed there. We discussed our summation report in preparation for a potential presentation. We spent the last 3 meetings discussing that report. And so that is all we did. We did not have a formal hearing of the public. The community was able to listen, but not provide input. We did have some meaty discussion around our consensus items and things that we wanted to have in a presentation. And that's what we did for the November 16th meeting. I think that's the only one listed. Oh no, the November 9th as well.
That's great. Thank you very much. I know we'll have a chance to talk more about the ad hoc committee under presentations in just a few minutes. We have 2 more. We'll hear from our Policy and Equity Committee Chair, Mr. Moraski. We will hear from someone else. We will come back to Policy Chair, Mr. Moraski. Ms. Bolton, would you like to present, or perhaps?
Absent, and the Vice President chaired the meeting.
Yes.
I'll present. Thank you, Mr. Craig.
Alrighty. So in our Budget and Finance meeting held on November 17th, we went through our standard monthly financial overviews, specifically paying attention to the Community Reinvestment Acts that were Community Reinvestment Area Agreements that were discussed that are on the treasurer's report for today. There's 3 specific properties that were listed in there. We also had a update on the budget roundtables, as well as a general overview of the standing with regards to from General Counsel with regards to the preschool promise master agreement. Additionally, we went over a couple of new policies that were kind of been bouncing back and forth between us and policy, with regards to gifts, grants, and bequests, as well as crowdsourcing, discussing, additionally efforts to ensure that the funds both are honor the intent of the donor, as well as respecting the law and ethical obligations of each of our principals, students, teachers, staff, whoever. We also went through a discussion around which of our properties are currently under certificates of participation, which include, and so we went through a list of that and kind of also provided, General Counsel provided a little bit better understanding, as well as the Treasurer's Office, specifically Mr. Ashley, around what could be and can't be done for those properties that are currently under, or currently being utilized as part of a current COPS agreement that the district has. The General Counsel also provided a inventory of our saleable properties, again, going through a list of properties that we were at, not that there is any particular action at this point, but that these are properties that would be subject to discussion. And then we tabled some additional items that, because our chair was not able to make it, we were going to leave it for discussion for December. So I submit these minutes and hope for their approval.
Thank you, Mr. Craig. Any questions on the Finance Committee minutes in your report? Okay, last but not least,
Excuse me,
Ms. Bolton.
comment. I do recall and have now understood that the meeting was at least 3 hours shorter without me.
And how many agenda items?
We should count the dollars saved there for all of the staff time for
Exactly right.
preparing and staffing and following up that
Go
committee.
back to work.
Yeah, take that out of our next levy. Next, we have Mr. Morosky on the Policy and Equity Committee.
Thank you, President Lindy. And yes, we also miss Ms. Bolton, and our meeting was a half an hour long.
Too.
It was a half an hour, yeah. And thank you to Vice President Craig and everyone on both committees for allowing me the grace to push back the start times of everything so I could be at Donuts with Dad at Hayes Porter, and it was great. So the report of the Policy and Equity Committee, we met right before Finance on November 17th, and I believe one of the items that you shelved was likely one of the policies that we had discussed that day, because I don't see it on the main agenda tonight. So Ms. Weinberg and I had great discussions with administration. We had Dr. Little there as well, and of course, General Counsel's team. We began by talking Policy 6152, the fines and fees that we had talked about at our last full board meeting. We didn't have anything additional to add. We just wanted to keep the conversation going, and we reported that the board seemed to agree with superintendent's recommendation that past night of the sort of base fee waiver. Policy 5201, truancy. This was brought up because I had asked to talk about chronic absenteeism in Policy Committee, and Dr. Little gave a lot of great information on what already is happening. And just to summarize, sort of where I was coming from was 2 places. One, with the spirit of not looking for punitive measures, obviously, for chronic absenteeism, but is there anything that we could do as a board to strengthen or bolster actions of the administration to combat this issue? I don't know the answer to that question. And so we're going to keep this on the policy agenda, and if there is, and Dr. Little said, the conversation is constantly going, and we can keep this going in January, February, and throughout next year as we look at how the board can be helpful combating this. I also, there was one other thing I believe, we had talked about adding language about that, and also taking into account items related to COVID, items related to homelessness, et cetera, into the truancy policy. We then got back to renaming Lighthouse. You'll recall we had talked about that as a full board. never formally assigned anything when all the Bramble community engagement started happening, so we wanted to bring it back up. And so tonight we had 2 action items that came out of the conversation. One was to recommend to the board to begin the renaming process, and the administration as well. So obviously I'll make that during assignments tonight, along with the other assignment with the resolution. And then also to let the rest of the board know, the idea came up from our committee, and I believe Ms. Bolton had talked about this as well in the full board meeting, that Dr. Odell Owens is certainly an option, but we wanted the rest of the board to know to email the superintendent, general counsel of options for names as we start this process. But out of our committee, again, the name Dr. Odell Owens had come up here, and it also came up again in the committee. Proposed new policies, 7230 and 7230.02, that's gifts, grants, and bequests and crowdsourcing respectively. Those were going to go to finance and then come here for approval. Board member Weinberg had an excellent question regarding this, however, which we needed finance to look at and obviously didn't have it, so we'll look at this again in January. And the question was, there's a line that says the school retains property ownership of any item received from the crowdsourcing campaign or purchased with crowdsourcing funds. Committee member Weinberg, who of course CPS teacher for a decade, inquired about the interpretation of that language in the policy when a teacher obtains grants based on their own certifications and whether or not they're able to keep that property in that case, to which Mr. Hoying was very receptive and said, yeah, it's a really good question. So we're going to look at that before we move forward with it. Other business, the renewable energy resolution was brought up at the end here by committee member Weinberg. Of course, we've already discussed that today. And then in January 2024 agenda, we started looking at that. Obviously, our scope of work, Lighthouse, gifts and grants, and then keep talking about truancy. We had one speaker of the public, the Walnut Hills LSDMC chair, talking about students on remaining on the property after school. I submit the minutes as written.
Thank you, Mr. Moraski. Any questions from board members on the policy committee's report? Ms. Bolton.
Just one comment or one question. We keep doing this about the truancy piece, which is just critical, terrible. But it'd be interesting, and maybe this can be an assignment issue, if you look at attendance by, of course, the way the state does that is sort of ridiculous. But if you look at attendance, and when you say the attendance numbers versus the chronic truancy or chronic absenteeism, it's a very different message. And it'd be interesting. The attendance numbers look pretty good, but the chronic absenteeism is such a big problem. We're talking about the same kids every day. And also Columbus has been doing some good work that was reported. I think you know from OSBA, they did a nice presentation. But that's the confusion for what I hear in the public. Well, my kid's going. What's going on here?
Thank you for the question. So I think there are 3 parts to that. One, there is average daily attendance, which I think is the one that you're referencing, which is the percentage of students that are actually in school based on the same criteria for the number of hours that they're in school. Then there is the chronic absenteeism calculation, which is calculated based on hourly numbers that would equate to the 17.8 number of days that students are out of school, which is the chronic absenteeism number, and they're not the same. So for example, across our schools, our average daily attendance in most schools is 90% or higher. So that's the average daily attendance. However, when you dig into the students and the number of hours that they are attending, that's how we get to the chronic absenteeism numbers, because it's specific to the individual child. The work around attendance, and actually Dr. Little served on my behalf on that task force from Columbus, has given some recommendations of things that we are actually really doing some of the lead work on already around attendance and around chronic absenteeism. But there are things that are recommended that we're already focusing on, which also goes in partnership with the House bill on attendance, which is really how our social workers really begin to do some of that work around the attendance intervention team meetings and following up with the parents and making sure that there were notices. So you're correct. When you look overall and you're thinking about daily, you know, in most places, over 90% of the students are there, then how are we also doing the calculations? And I think a part of it, as I've said before, goes back to educating families around what it means for students to be chronically absent and how much time they are missing from school. That really equates to about a month of school when you add up all of the hours for being out. And so it's just important for us to keep making sure that that message is clear and that we're doing as much as possible to also recognize students that are in attendance so that they're seeing the benefit of them also being there and keeping our activities in school engaging for students so that they want to be a part of the learning environment.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions about the committee reports this evening? Okay, hearing none, all in favor of adopting the 6 committee reports on the agenda, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Committee reports are adopted. Great. We're going to move right into the presentations and discussions this evening. We have 2 of them, starting with the ad hoc committee update from Dr. Moffitt.
So I sent the board members and a question at the committee. We had a meeting on Friday, and I'll welcome the committee members to chime in. We are working on our summary report. I think we definitely have consensus. We have recommendations. We just don't have consensus on how to write it, if that makes any sense. So we know what we want to write. It's just some of us like bullets, some of us like words. So the report is actually written. We are not prepared to do a formal report for you today. However, we will have all of that completed by December 11th. Not exactly sure if we will have the opportunity to present, as I'm being told that that day is already full of things for the board to do. So there is no guarantee that we will have the opportunity to present our findings. However, a presentation will be readily available and the report will be written for the next board meeting. In the event that we don't have the opportunity to present due to time, the committee has discussed having a separate time to potentially offer it to board members and the community and the public. If anyone can attend, that'd be great. But we do have recommendations and we did spend a significant amount of work writing it up. So committee members, board member Jones, board member Bolton, did I miss anything there?
I think it's imperative, since this is such a big effort and with lots to say and do, and it's also getting close to the end when one part of our committee will be leaving service, is that whatever needs to happen to make it possible for us to have a public presentation as well as presenting the report for our board members so that we can make it clear to the public. You see, like from John P. Parker, they're assuming something's done or not done or whatever. So I would encourage, and I know that it doesn't take but a couple of board members to say we really want this on the agenda and we need it on the agenda. And I know bylaws says within the 2 meetings, but that's our last meeting, I think, as we get close. So we need to do whatever we can do and make an urge to the chair that we're able to make this as a public presentation because it's huge, very important. So thanks.
Board member Jones?
Yes, I'd like to also lend support to my colleagues. The report is pretty extensive, but I think that the challenges that we've had is us making sure that what we present is what's going to be helpful for the board, for the full board to process and make a decision with administration. So I am also encouraging some level of presentation. I don't know. I know an hour was talked about. I don't know, but there may have to be some compromise. But that is my last meeting, and I would certainly love to be, and I think I have to be, a part of the presentation. So I think we'll ask, and I don't know if Dr. Moffitt was gonna talk a little bit about, were we gonna gauge or have discussion with the full board about what particularly they wanted to know? Maybe we can highlight certain areas or whatever, but
Well,
that's up to the
I
committee.
sent that out because we discussed that at the committee meeting Friday, sending it out to everybody via email just to ask the question, what is it specifically that they may have been wanting to see? And I did hear back from a few that there wasn't anything specific, but they were very interested in hearing the information about what we found. And so again, we spent about 18 months collecting data. We have tons and tons of findings. We've broken that down into 5 themes, and there is very useful information. We were going to make this compact into an hour presentation, of which, again, we have everything written. It's just trying to, we've compiled everything. It's really just trying to ensure that the board members will have a clear understanding in what we found from the historical perspective to the budget restrictions that we have to our recommendations. How do all of those things tie into the strategic plan, our goals and guardrails? We have all of that. It's just really trying to make it succinct enough that you all can understand 18 months worth of work and diligence and engagement with the community and administration in an hour presentation. It's not the timing that's the issue. It's really just trying to format it so that everyone can understand, and we can do not only due diligence, but add some integrity to all of the work that's been done. So prayerfully, we will be able to, we'll have it ready by the 11th, and prayerfully we'll be able to present it at that time.
Thank you, Dr. Moffitt. Thank you, committee members. And I'm excited about the progress that's been made, and it may be even further along than I thought it was. Is it fair to say then that there is a list of recommendations that are ready to go out to the board? It's just it's a formatting question?
We do have recommendations. We have about 11 pages of data and information. Again, we are working collaboratively on how to present that. And so we have a recommendation, a theme for the recommendation, and we've got all of our consensus items under there. Some of us believe bullets work best and we'll just explain it. Some of us believe, no, we need a little bit more context. So it's not that that the data and the information isn't there. We want to make sure that if the board members do read it, if the community does read it, independent of an explanation, it's able to stand by itself. And so that's really where we are, is put a little bit more information here, but we've got the format already ready. We've got 11 pages, 12 pages of that. That's not inclusive of Jeremy's maps that we have, the appendix for maps. What should we put in there so that you all understand from a historical perspective where we were to where we are? Again, I'm going to remind you, this started April of 2022. So we've been doing quite a bit of work and collecting data, working with administration on what are some of the recommendations as far as moving forward, taking into account the fact that we're doing this because of the budget. Where do we stand? Board Member Bolton wants to add.
Yeah. Thank you, Ms. Bolton, and then I want to respond to what Dr. Moffitt shared.
Yeah, I think that we have recommendations, and I think a great effort to have recommendations with some degree of consensus on the committee. But if you just list the recommendations and do not present any context, you're just really setting off a very short fuse. Because you're going to have to figure out the justification, the reasoning, and whatever. So I think we have recommendations and we have themes, but it also, I think the issue is finding a way to format the context so that people have a better understanding. So it's a difference between a report and a presentation. I'm sure the superintendent and the treasurer have to go through that all the time. How do you make all this stuff into a presentation is part of the issue, but the context is critical.
And I think I'd like to make as much time for that as possible in the time that we have. I think my question would be, when could the pre-read go out to board members? Because I think if there's the level of, and I'm grateful to have gone to several different ad hoc committee meetings and kind of gotten a sense. I went through all the different reports for the 18 months. There's a lot that you all have discussed. over the last 18 months. I think it would be, given that volume, I think it would be helpful for folks to have it ahead of time, to read it, to digest it, to come in with some questions ready. When do you think the report could come out to folks ahead of time?
I'm going to look at my colleagues on that.
Well, I mean, we have to follow the protocol for how
Right.
we do that, so we got to get the report done. When this.
I think we could definitely have the report ready to go within the 48-hour notice that is typical for noticing for the public. I will also say we are struggling as well because there were items that we did not come to consensus on, and we want the board's input. So it's not just simply a presentation. It was to also engage you all with, hey, these are items where we were thinking about this. We couldn't agree as a recommendation, but we need your input and what do you think? So it was not simply just giving you information. It was to actually have an engaging conversation around the struggles that we faced based on the information that we received.
And I think that sounds very healthy and very legitimate. You know, I think, and to have something out ahead of time that people can read that says, hey, here are the areas where we've done a lot of research. Here's what we found. Here's what we're recommending. Here's our rationale for that. Here, on the other hand, are a couple of issues that we discussed a great deal. Honestly, there's arguments to be made in multiple directions. Here's what some of that information is. We look forward to discussing it with the group. I think for folks to have that ahead of time, to read through that and to discuss that at our next meeting sounds very healthy and very appropriate. So I mean, I think what I would certainly like to try to do on my end is make as much time for that. I'll be transparent. One of my concerns has been the fact that it is Member Jones's last meeting. And I would like to make sure we do. I understand, and other people may have plans too. I want to make sure that we're able to do something that is commensurate with the moment. And what I'm hearing from you, that you would also like to make sure that this is part of that meeting. Yeah, that's important. And I think having the both where there are recommendations and an enumeration of where there is not consensus and why ahead of time, I think it would be really helpful.
And I'm also going to say, we have Board Member Jones until 11:59 on December 31st. So if we don't get it, we've already let her know she is bound to us until.
I knew that.
So we're not, you know, if we can get the 11th, that's good, but we can find another day.
Vice President Craig, did you have a comment too? Mr. Morosky?
I was just going to say, nothing seems more commensurate with the moment, Ms. Jones, than having an extremely long meeting. So I appreciate that.
That's right. And I thank you all.
Trying to not have that happen. So we can then look forward to that coming from the committee by, what is that, Thursday?
No
Thank you.
later than Friday.
I think our usual rule is 48
I
business
know.
hours. So it would be.
Well, I think you've given us a direction here too, as to helping us a bit with the format of the presentation. Here's what we've we've got this stuff. Here's our justification. Here's what we're recommending. Here are the things that are still, we need input on.
Yeah.
And here are the things that are still like next steps. So, I mean, I think you
Yeah.
just saying the way you said it has helped us perhaps come up with a shorter
I promise we'll go in.
presentation.
Mr. Craig, just one second, but also I'm understanding there aren't costs yet. So there are recommendations, but they're either for things that are cost neutral or they're recommendations pending a future analysis of how much it would cost.
So what we've done is we've actually broken this up into phases. So this is phase one, and we will collect, we have all of this that we were thinking would save the district money or would be an additional cost. But we want to present this to the board, get the board's recommendation, get the board's consensus, and then give that back to administration to give us the cost analysis for that. Because we don't know if you all, as a teaser, if we were to say middle schools and the board says, hey, yeah, that looks good, what we would need the cost analysis of that. And you all would need to tell us where you would think about that in order for us to do a proper cost analysis, because we can say we want middle schools, but there is another layer, according to our administration and our treasurer, that there's staffing costs, there's transportation costs, but that is dependent upon where that is. And so this is the phase one, presenting all the information to you, finding out where the board would like to go, and then giving that back to the administration to perform and the treasurer to perform the cost analysis.
Mr. Craig was very patient, and I know Superintendent want to bring you in too.
I was going to say, I think Dr. Moffitt actually hit on a couple areas that I was going to ask questions about, but I wanted to make sure I clarified that what's going to be coming to the board are recommendations for which the board would then provide as direction for getting the administration to review and inquire into, both feasibility, the reality of some things, like long-term, short-term, midterm expectations for things, costs for things, for which they could then bring back an actual recommendation to the board for the board to, either approve, get feedback on, direct back, whatever the case may be at that point. But it's nothing within what's being offered is for us to then say, board approves it, that means therefore tomorrow it has to happen. Correct?
Correct. Not tomorrow, but like we're proposing it for for the upcoming year. Some of those things are for the upcoming year. Does that make sense? But this has already been done in collaboration with the administration and the community. So
I guess what I'm asking though is that are there any of the recommendations of things that, like my understanding is that are the recommendations of something for that then the gives direction to the administration. So like what we would be approving and giving guidance on at the next meeting would be then directing the administration to review and provide a official recommendation as to what actions could and cannot be taken, that kind of deal.
I think it's, you've hit on it too, is that not only do we need the input, but certainly the administration, who's been, a partner in all of this, working through this any number of ways and times, certainly doesn't want to necessarily, engage the entire administration into doing something that maybe 2 out of 3 people want or 3 out of 3 people want. Obviously, I think the administration wants to hear where the general views of the board might be, and where there are priorities or where there's greater interest, or try to, so it does go back to the administration for sure. So to your point, Vice President, that's what it would be.
Thank you, Vice President Craig, because that was actually my question. There's been, we've been engaged in this for 1.5 years, and that's the same amount of time that I think I've been here. So we've started that work. It was already started, I think, when I came, and then we got engaged in it as well. And there has been a lot of time that's been put in by the committee, and also a lot of time by our staff, both in the committee meetings and outside of the committee meetings, because it has been very information intensive. So I think that the clarification from Board Member Craig around the information coming as getting some level of consensus from the board for what we would need to do next to do deeper study around to then bring back proposals does add a level of clarity for us, because I think that there are, to the point of both Board Member Moffitt and Board Member Bolton, there are some things that could be feasible for the upcoming school year, but most of what I've seen will take some additional planning. And so based on but I don't know yet, because we're still confirming what those recommendations might be, and then the consensus of the board, we don't know where to spend the energy. And so we've not done that part yet, nor has the team asked us to do that yet, because they are waiting to solidify more of the information, which we were thinking, a part of us were thinking that we were going to get some of that tonight. So hearing that it's going to be a bit later does push even back farther, where we may be able to give feedback around what may be feasible in the work that we can do moving forward. So we do appreciate it, and I appreciate the clarification.
Okay, well, I appreciate everybody's engagement on this. I know that this is a tricky set of issues, and I appreciate everyone's hard work. To clarify where I think we are, we will look forward to the recommendations from the committee, as well as an enumeration of some open issues that will come by the end of the day on Thursday. That way board members will have a chance to read it before the board meeting, and the administration will have a chance to read it before the board meeting, and then we can then discuss it with the time that we can make available on the 11th. We do, just to name the things that are already on that agenda that we're going to still do. One of them is we have a progress monitoring that night on 3rd grade reading. We'll be looking at some in-year data. We also have progress monitoring on the guardrail around communications. And then everyone here, I'm going to get a 2 for here, because I was reminding everybody about, or a note to myself to remind people about you have a partner for the 6-month self-evaluation under our governance coaching. That does not need to take long if everybody's done it ahead of time. It's not due yet. It's due in preparation for Monday's meeting. So if people can do that and get it done and get it in, I think we can shrink that discussion to be as focused and efficient as possible. But those are the two other things, in addition to celebrating the contributions of Ms. Jones, that we need to make sure we do that night. So with that, I've gotten my board self-governance reminder done, so we can turn to our resolutions section this evening. Is there a motion? Ms. Bolton, would you like to present the first resolution?
Thank you very much. We're all familiar with this sort of perfunctory resolution requesting authority from Hamilton County Budget Commission to file a modified tax budget for the 24-25 fiscal year. I submit and hope for approval.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Moffitt. Any discussion on the first resolution? Ms. Wagner, would you call the roll, please?
Ms. Bolton?
Aye.
Mr. Craig?
Yes.
Ms. Jones?
Yes.
Dr. Moffitt?
Yes.
Mr. Morosky?
Yes.
Mrs. Weinberg?
Yes.
President Lindy?
Yes. Ms. Weinberg, would you like to present the second?
Yes, I am presenting a resolution approving students eligible for subsidy reimbursement in lieu of transportation for the 2023-2024 school year. I move that this resolution be accepted as written.
Thank you, Mrs. Weinberg. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Jones. Any discussion on the resolution? Ms. Wagner, would you call the vote, please?
Ms. Bolton?
Aye.
Mr. Craig?
Yes.
Ms. Jones?
Yes.
Dr. Moffitt?
Yes.
Mr. Morosky?
Yes.
Mrs. Weinberg?
Yes.
President Lindy?
Yes. Before we move to superintendents of schools, I have a question for our board around a potential additional resolution. I'm not actually sure how many people have seen this note from Pat and from others. We've had a request come in from the family of a 40-year CPS employee who has recently passed away. This is a gentleman named Mr. Willie Clark, who was a 40-year CPS employee, and he was, as I understand, did not know Mr. Clark personally, but as I understand it, he was certainly on the staff at Withrow. And Pat, I know you're listening in the other room. If you could find his position and text that. No, thank you, Mr. Hoying. He was the building engineer at Withrow High School. Our team has kindly put together a sample resolution that we could use. And I'm happy to make sure everybody has a copy of that. You might have gotten a copy of it earlier. Did not. And I think that in a stroke of genius, I left my hard copies in the board office. Are you able, Mr. Hoying, just to forward you could just email to folks. I think there are probably arguments on both sides, right? On the one hand, we have a lot of folks who retire from CPS. There's probably some risk of could we do this for everybody? I also think for somebody who has passed away and is being asked by the family after a 40-year career, some words of appreciation from our board feels completely reasonable. And I would be very happy to vote in support of this tonight, but I'm a little unclear about whether there is additional historical precedent out there, whether there are reasons why we shouldn't do that. And I certainly want to make sure everybody's had a chance to see what the team put together. While that's coming through to everyone's inbox, are there any thoughts on this topic? Ms. Bolton?
Over time, our issue has been once you do it, then you must do it for everyone. And then you have to figure out what does that actually mean. Also, a resolution is pretty heavy duty stuff. If we have staff and people that can watch this and make sure that we do this in a unified way for everyone, I would suggest it be an action item instead of a resolution. That's a formal statement by the board. It requires a document. It doesn't have the force of a resolution, but at least it is a recognition of the service that's been guaranteed. Granted, and I also would say, as part of this, I sure wish we'd start doing stuff when people reach their 10th year, their 20th year, their 30th year, and their 40th year, because this is an incredibly unappreciative district. And I think we have to face that. And in the culture that we want to create, I think we need to find ways to do it. But I would suggest an action item, and I would suggest this will fall to the administration and our board staff and boards moving forward. If we do it once, we're going to have to do it consistently. But I would suggest an action item.
Can you say more about what an action item is? I'm not sure I understand.
We take action without passing a resolution. It's a vote, and it's with intent and purpose. We used to do it pretty much, I won't say all the time, but it was something that was before you get to resolution.
Thank you, Ms. President.
Actually, there have been a couple of important action items. We had a discussion this past week or two, I believe, about Montessori issues, that maybe something about Montessori was an action item but wasn't policy or wasn't whatever. I had former member Bates talk to me about that. I don't know if the treasurer or the superintendent's been a part of that conversation.
So if I recollect it being called an action motion, and it was referring to an action motion, I want to say it was 82, that made a commitment to that once you started an academic program, you had the right to continue in that academic program until you exited the district. So it was about Montessori, elementary, getting to a Montessori program in the high school, and foreign language and those kinds of things.
Thank you, Ms. Wagner. Are there other perspectives from board members? The superintendent is communicating to me that maybe there's something here I'm not thinking of. Anything you want to add?
I would just add that I agree that once we start a process, I understand the ask. I think in this situation, this person has passed away. And so this is an ask for a resolution to be read, I believe, at their services.
That's right.
Council, is that correct?
Yes.
Yes. So I think that that's the purpose, but I do agree that it does open up, quite a bit. The other part is, in my short time here, I started May the 2nd, as we all know. This is the first ask that we've had of this type. We have had asked for other things, to Board Member Bolton's point, about retirements or retirement parties or those kinds of things. So I do think that it would, we at some point, we do need to have a conversation around how we're going to deal with those things, because that way it doesn't just become a matter of this is someone that knows how to contact the board, or they're connected to this person, so they contact to get information.
So what if we do two things? What if we say we're going to have an action motion tonight, so the family has something from the board that they can read at the funeral, and we assign to our policy committee the job of writing some guidance for how and when we do what in honor of people. That way we have something that is on the books. It is standard. We can use it in the future. That way we do the something good in the short term, but also we're not committing ourselves to something that would have unintended consequences while putting a more formal process in place. That's Solomonic enough? Great. Ms. Bolton. Ms. Jones.
Yes, I think that because the family is requesting this, we don't get a lot of requests.
That's right.
But because the family is requesting, I would like to suggest that we respond. Maybe this time, and I like the idea of giving it the policy, but for this time, maybe we could just do a card with a simple greeting to acknowledge and recognize him and for his service, for the services, not a resolution. And I know the same issue exists that, it could come up, but I do feel very strongly that because the family asked for something, that we could give something back.
No concerns here whatsoever. I think I want to do right by the family and create a good process. Dr. Moffitt.
So I just want to bring to light that there have been other people that have worked for our district that for like in excess of 30 years. I know I was asking for something for Ms. Jenkins, and it never happened. So I do think, to Board Member Bolton's point, we are a very unappreciative district in my mind. 30 plus years of service should get something different to me, because we want to celebrate those that have kind of stuck with our district over time. I think it's We shouldn't have to wait for them to pass away in order to acknowledge that they've been with our district over decades. So I'm all for the resolution here because like Board Member Jones said, because the family specifically asked, but I don't know if it needs to go to policy for something formal, or if it just needs to simply be an assignment. Who are our employees that have been with the district for 30 plus years or 40 years, and then acknowledge them. Because I think that we do acknowledge the retirees. Board Member Weinberg does a great job with that, but we could also take time to just read the names of those that have come upon their anniversary of 30 plus years. I don't know if we need to have a policy about that, but we can certainly direct administration to look up that number and that name of those names of people and read them on their anniversary.
Thank you, Dr. Moffitt. I think we could try to talk about this all evening, and I think I want to both get some clarity and give everybody a chance to weigh in. Ms. Jones, would you be willing to motion that we do the card on behalf of the board and that we assign this to policy?
Two things.
Yes, please.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion that we respond to the family's wishes by sending a card, a written offering of sympathy for his passing on behalf of the board, and then further that by assigning to policy committee to review. They may or may not come up, they may disagree that it needs a policy, because I'm trying to take into account what Dr. Moffitt said, but to really look at it and come back to the board with recommendation for how we proceed as standard protocol.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Morosky. A discussion? Ms. Bolden? Mike, please.
I think it's important, the card or what have you, but I don't know who, the gentleman necessarily, but I think what is probably wanted by the family is that something that can be read from the pulpit, celebrating his service to Cincinnati Public. So I think that card certainly should be there from the board, but I think there needs to be a statement that's been put together that indeed the minister or the family can read from the pulpit about his 40 years of service.
So we could, from the amendment, Ms. Jones, that we send the card, but we also email to the family some language that the pastor or the appropriate person can use in the service.
Friendly amendment.
Okay.
Yes.
Ms. Weinberg?
Yes, I just wanted to add to that to just make sure that that statement, whether you're putting it inside of the card, because they can read that card at the service.
Sure.
A lot of people do that as they acknowledge. Just making sure to provide the years of service within that draft.
Yep. Noted. Thank you. Any other discussion? Dr. Moffitt?
I just have a question. Dan, did they say that they wanted, I thought I heard you say they wanted someone from the board to read it? Or were they just saying that they just wanted it from the board? Okay. I just want to clarify.
Yep. Any other discussion? All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Great. Now we are on to item J, Superintendent of Schools. Do we have any retirements this evening?
Yes, we have President Lindy. We have one retiree. Well, no, excuse me, we have two. So coming from our certificated, we have Gerald J. Bates, Class 3 daily substitute teacher, along with Lonnie L. Mertlin, a physical education teacher from Saylor Park School. We just want to thank them for their service and their years of commitment and dedication to this district, and we wish them all of the best.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Weinberg. Is there a motion to adopt the recommendations of the superintendent this evening?
So moved.
Thank you, Vice President Craig. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Weinberg. Any discussion on the superintendent's recommendations? Ms. Wagner, would you call the vote, please?
Ms. Bates?
I'm
sorry.
I thought if we said it
not a
enough
joke?
times, we would have.
That was a good one. That was a good one.
In my brain.
Listen, when she was
Is she
here, it was
listening?
worse.
I was
It's
just
okay.
thinking about action motions.
I
and-
know.
I'm sorry, Ms. Bolton.
Her name has come up at least 4 times tonight. Aye.
Mr. Craig?
Yes.
Ms. Jones?
I'd like to recuse on recommendation 1E for certificated personnel on page 14, please. But yes to everything else.
Dr. Moffitt?
Yes.
Mr. Morosky?
Yes.
Mrs. Weinberg,
Yes.
President Lindy.
Yes, superintendent's recommendations are approved. Is there a motion to adopt the recommendation or the treasurer's report this evening?
So move.
Thank you, Ms. Bolden. Is there a second? Second time, gosh. We got Ms. Bates, we got Ms. Bolden. Thank you, Ms. Jones.
It is that type of.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Moffett. So I got that one right. Any discussion on the treasurer's report? Ms. Wagner, would you call the vote, please?
Ms. Bolton,
Aye.
Mr. Craig,
Yes.
Ms. Jones. Yes. Dr. Moffett,
Yes.
Mr. Morosky.
Just don't call me Mr. Messer. Yes.
Mrs. Weinberg,
Yes.
President Lindy.
Yes. Okay. We are through item K. On item L, we've actually tackled one of these already. So yes, so Cincinnati School Promise Master Agreement. So I think basically I just want to turn it over to the superintendent and to the general counsel here in a second. I think at our last board meeting, there was a request that the administration take the feedback from the discussion and put forward to the board and share with the board a proposed response before sharing that with the preschool promise. That's what's happened, and I wanted everybody received this some time ago, I think. And I think as we're discussing it now, if it's not already posted to board docs, if it could be, so that people can follow along, we want to hear from the superintendent and general counsel.
So we did share the information with the board. We had not posted it to board docs, but we can forward it and post it at this time.
Yeah, and just to say a word on that, generally a red line from the Office of General Counsel would not get posted to the public, but I think this is different. This was really incorporating the comments and feedback that the board had at the committee of the whole meeting, where there was a full discussion of the agreement. So really that's what the redlining represents, is your comments. So I certainly think it could be posted.
So just for clarity,
yeah, go ahead.
we're posting it, right? Okay.
I mean, if you want, I'll say just, there were about 4 or 5 big changes, I'd say, from the last draft that we talked about at the committee of the whole. There was more definition put into preschool program, defining that as it had been defined under the previous master agreement, in terms of age limited, serving age limited residents, students, school year kind of based programming. There was, I would note that funding should be based proportional to sort of the projected enrollments of Preschool Promise and Cincinnati Public Schools. There was an addition for funding of special ed teams that CPS puts in place to serve the additional preschool students. There were some financial accountability measures, including having the CFO, treasurer on the financial working group, or now known as the audit committee of the CPP. There was an addition that standard assessments should be given to students both in Preschool Promise program at private preschools and CPS preschools, and that the results of those assessments should measure kindergarten readiness and be available to all parties. And the term was updated to match the term of the levy. So those were the changes based on your comments in the last committee of the whole.
Thank you, Mr. Hoying. Superintendent, anything that you want to share as well? Or?
I think that's in alignment with what we discussed already. The updates were made based on that.
Great. So any feedback, comments from board members? Again, folks received this some time ago, but this is the first time we have been together since then, and it's the first time we've been able to discuss this as a group. Ms. Bolton.
Yeah, I appreciate the work, and as it's posted on board docs, it should be a draft or what, I mean, it's so that that's clear, or that the status of it, it's been sent to Preschool Promise folks, and they have not.
It has not been sent yet.
So I think we need to kind of say that this is something we're going to be sending to them. I mean, I don't want people to think that anything's determined, but I would like say draft. The only area, and I think I've sent this to General Counsel, there still remains confusion about the Board of Managers as to the purpose and representation that the Board of Managers are supposed to be serving. When the Board of Managers, which is for the preschool promise, was created, it was seen as a representative body of the parties that put the preschool promise program together. And so the folks that were there are representing at least the two parties and some community group too, or whatever was in the first design. And then from those various perspectives, they reach the consensus and a mutual commitment to preschool and what is needed. I think what sort of happened along the way is that seeing that the Board of Managers as a representative body has somehow dissipated. And I think, frankly, that's part of the problem that we've confronted. So I would hope that as we look at the draft, and I think I sent to General Counsel a couple of sentences about that, the idea that they're representative of the parties, and then that consensus for those mutual parties gets to be created. I have confidence with Member Jones being there to help remind people of what that was, but I think there is confusion about that. So I'd like to see that added whenever we add something again, as I suggested to you individually.
Thank you, Ms. Milton. Did Mr. Schwinn respond at all?
The only response, I don't believe that there's any intent from Preschool Promise to change the representation of the Board of Managers. We certainly can clarify that and make sure that it's, but I don't believe that's been their intent.
Actions. There's no ill feeling about it. I'm just saying over time, the original concept has been lost. And so I just think a clarification of that would help everybody know their role and how we best can find that mutuality again. Jones has some comment.
Yeah, I was going to say, reiterate what Board Member Bolton said. I think having been appointed to that board and certainly having some conversation about it, I do think that there's a great deal of confusion. But here's what I think the challenge is, and I know on the agenda tomorrow, there are two items, right? There's a discussion about shared vision and one about the MOU. I think in shared vision, as Mr. Hoying is saying, there needs to be some discussion around there needs to be some discussion about philosophy and how we came about. And I'm not talking about hours of this, but we have new people. The Board of Managers is new. I won't call Shar Fisher-Jackson new, but she wasn't there when we originally started working on this. And the same with this board. We have new members. So philosophically, the context of what this partnership was about somehow got, and I don't want to use, I'm saying muddy, but not really muddy, diffused a little bit. So yeah, and that happens, it's normal. So I do think it's important, maybe in that discussion tomorrow, maybe somebody who has a memory better than mine can update and we can really talk about that a little bit, not spend a whole lot of time, because it gives us some direction. And that the question for me has always been, what's going to be my role when I go to that group? As I'm sure many of them probably have the same question. What is my role? Am I to represent the interests of the district, which is hard to do? I mean, I can still do that, but then you're serving on a board, which you have to represent their interest as a whole. So it's not fragmented, but I do understand what Ms. Bolton is talking about, and it's been a source of anxiety for me. So I'd like, if we could, to talk a little bit about that tomorrow.
Ms. Johnson, what I'm writing down here to make sure I've got it right is to create some time in that meeting for some historical perspective, as some context setting before getting into the shared mission and before shared vision and before getting into the master agreement discussion. Is that fair?
A little bit of time, yes.
Great. Well, thank you. And then I did not mean to imply an enormous amount or a tiny amount. I think like the right amount, whatever that needs. Thank you. Dr. Moffat, followed by Superintendent.
So I appreciate the work. I have some concerns about the end of page 1 and page 2. Because I tried to take some time to read over what was, to bring myself up to speed on, and then I'm slightly conflicted because as a voter, I wasn't a board member at the time, I understood things to be one way, and this seems, this just causes me pause. So at the end where it's been added around the definition of a preschool program, I heard CPP or the Preschool Promise folks talk about wanting their school year to look different than ours. And I'm not exactly certain if that ending paragraph is advantageous to all types of school years, or is that specifically a CPS type school year? I also have some questions around, it says funding amounts should be based on projections of the number of students served by CPS, CPP respectively on page 2C. The respectively is what is, again, just making me think. And then the step up the quality scale, I know when I try to do some research, they're not based on per child only. They're also based, they also have the cost of quality inclusive in there, which I don't see a little bit of that. So I feel like this tries to make things equal instead of equitable. And so I'm a little, I don't know if we just don't understand what the cost of quality is, or maybe we need to have a little bit further discussion around that, because it's not equal on both sides. But yet this seems as if it's written that way. So I have some pause there. Again, the end of page 1, page 2, I'm looking forward to further discussion, because I see that seems to be very, my interest is the best interest of kids, and looking at this from how the voters voted this. I didn't vote for it that way. So I'm really looking forward to the discussion tomorrow for getting clarity around what their needs are. They specifically asked us for year-round programming, but can you point that to me in this document? See, so I didn't think I saw it in there.
No, it's back, I think it's written back to defining preschool promise as the preschool program as school year.
Okay.
Which is different than what they were asking. I agree.
Right.
I don't know where a majority of the board stands on that, but I think there may still be a difference.
Well, there could very well be, and hopefully the discussion will be fruitful and provide that clarity. But when I think about it in terms of equity, we're asking them to conform to our school year, and they've given justification why maybe that's not beneficial to them. So again, I'm
I hear
looking
you.
forward to the discussion.
The second point is also good, although cost of quality, just so we're on, I think they would say that the current agreement offers them some funding for quality improvement.
Okay.
And I think that's what you're referring to when
Maybe.
you say, yeah.
Yeah, I may have it wrong.
And that's not, I would not say that that's necessarily built into.
Okay.
Superintendent?
If I could also add, and the treasurer can do the same, I think in the last meeting when we started having the conversations, we also discussed while we had the initial recommendations, we would take the feedback and then bring it back based on what we heard from the board. There had been some background work that was done between our treasurer and their CFO as well, to then begin to codify a structure of what those things would look like. If we recall from before, we discussed, for example, the support that we provide as a district for special education services. That was one of the things that we discussed. So if our treasurer could speak about that for a moment. I wanted to go back for a minute for just a point of clarity for me prior to tomorrow. So to the point about the interest, the interest of the members that are on the board that were appointed to the board by CPS. As I understand it, those individuals, while it is all one, it is also those individuals would represent the interests of CPS. So are we saying that in the conversation, we're clarifying that or seeing if that's still the case? Or what does that, what are we looking to do in that space to prepare? Because I think that the other part that I heard is over the course of the years, those individuals met at some point with the administration to talk about the expectations, the work, so forth and so on. That was not something that was shared until we were sitting at this table. And so that just to get a little bit of clarification there before we enter into that conversation tomorrow with the co-group that will be there with us for the meeting.
Is there a board member who wants to speak to that, Ms. Jones?
I'll speak to it the best that I'm able, but
You
yes.
gotta be kind of impressed I got that name right there that time.
With Preschool Promise, when we first started that collaboration or partnership, it was established by the three, what do you call them? The three entities that had 4 appointments each. And at that time, it was, in fact, that and I'll speak specifically to CPS, that those 4 members who were appointed acted in the interests of the district. And they met with, at that time, Cheryl Broadnax, and after that, Vera, to really be informed of kind of any changes, trends, anything, to keep us up to date, financial stuff, so that we can have that knowledge to help support the mission of CPP. I do think, though, there's been an evolution with that, which is why it's confusing now. And I think the question that's being put out there now is, well, how can you fairly represent, or if you say equitably, represent Cincinnati Preschool Promise if your interest is over here, you see? And so there really does need to be some discussion about that tomorrow, and a reality check of what this is all about. I mean, do we need to go back to the original language of the levy? Do we have any material that we can pull up? We did lots of good work around this, and unfortunately, I can't find it in my system, but we did lots of good work around this that gave really the philosophical basis for this. So the short answer is yes, there were 4 people appointed who at that time represented the interest of CPS. So, yeah.
Thank you very much, Ms. Bolton.
I would just add that it would be good to see the founding documents.
Yes.
For the creation of the Preschool Promise Board of Managers. It's not a board of directors, it's a board of managers. There was tremendous thought going into this. And I would like to see that the founding documents, because also as part of this, I can remember we in selecting and choosing people to represent CPS, we had organizations that we called upon to help us select who would represent CPS. So yeah. I think the which is from a spirit as well as the letter of the founding documents, it was that we were reaching out to the community to help us, but they were going to represent this partnership, not a grant. This is a partnership of tax money, and the partnership together did pretty well for 10 years. Finding common ground and moving forward. And now I think there's just been confusion. So I think it could help strengthen as well as clarify everybody's purpose.
Thank you, Ms. Bolton. Mrs. Weinberg.
So I just have a question of clarification on the document that we have here on page 4, where it talks, I think, number 6, board representation. Is that what you're referring to when you're talking about exactly, kind of, I guess, the definition?
Yeah, there is a paragraph in there that somebody mentioned to me in the paragraph was talking about the purpose of the Board of Managers. I don't have the document in front
Yeah,
of me.
so with this document pulled up, I'm just trying to make sure if this is correct where it says board representation, CPS shall be entitled to nominate 5 managers to serve on the CPP Board of Managers, subject to the terms, conditions, blah, 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 and they shall serve in the best interest of CPP. Is that what you're referring to when you're talking about the managers? So what they have here, is this their suggested verbiage, or was this here before? For number 6, where it says board representation.
We'll have to look again. I'm not aware that they have an interest in changing, but I can't tell you right now whether this is exact language from the first master agreement. I can check.
I just want to make sure what I'm reading is
Right.
correct or that I understand it going into tomorrow. And if not, I'll just bring it up as a conversation piece.
It's certainly consistent from CPS's side. I don't think, Ms. Bolton is absolutely correct that CPS made the decision to have representatives from different groups, the NAA, I think our employee groups. But that was our decision. That wasn't written into the founding documents. It's true that we had the right to appoint kind of 5 managers. The other groups did as well. So again, this is consistent. I'm not sure if it's verbatim from the first master.
Thank you.
Yep.
As we look to tomorrow, I have a couple of things I want to bring up, but I want to make sure everybody who has any other questions or comments has a chance to go first. Okay, so just a couple of things as we look to tomorrow morning. So people should have also received an email from the board office that came from the board chair of Cincinnati Preschool Promise last week, I believe on Wednesday. And so this is not new information. Everybody got this already. Hopefully you've all read it. But what they said in that email was that their board only wants to meet with the full group when there is a proposal for a new master agreement that the subcommittee that they have set up supports. As a result of that, and again, this all came out in an email to you all last week, Wednesday. As a result of that, the people that they are preparing to send to the meeting tomorrow morning is that group of people. And they have full authority from their board to negotiate with us. You can look up who those 4 people are. I don't want to say them out loud and forget one person, but they're in that email that you received from Pat or Phyllis last week. So again, I just want to make sure, I don't want anybody to come tomorrow morning and be surprised. They are excited to talk about shared vision. They're excited to talk about a new master agreement. And according to that email, they are confident that whatever that subcommittee endorses is what their full board will propose. So the thing I just want to lay out there is I want to make sure that our board is all in to meet with that group of people. I am. I think it would be productive. I will be here. But I'd like to know if I'm going to be by myself. So are other folks still committed to being here tomorrow morning? I'm seeing nods from people. Great. Comments on that point from Ms. Jones, followed by Ms. Bolton.
Yes, I read the letter. I'm not quite sure. I had some mixed thoughts about it. One being that that's fine. It's tomorrow. We will have 4 of their representatives who are coming here to work. So I'm assuming that this is sort of a work group session. What's lacking and what we need to think about for future planning is, especially because it's levy funded, we should stay in the public eye, is that tomorrow's meeting doesn't really support the foundation for creating a new shared vision because it doesn't include all members who are involved. And so it seems to me, I mean, my preference would have been, even if we had to push it back, let's find a time that most of the people could be here so we could have that broad scope conversation, but it is what it is. And so tomorrow, I'm not quite sure. What I hear you saying, President Lindy, is that they're coming prepared to work, and those people are going back to make recommendations. If that's how they choose to do it, that's fine. I just saw it differently, but it's okay. I'll be there tomorrow.
Thank you much. Ms. Bolton.
No.
Okay, so if people are good on, I wanted to be clear about who is going to be here tomorrow. That was thing 1. I got 2 others. Dr. Moffitt and then Mr. Craig. Oh, great. Sorry, you're saying you'll be here. Yes, we've got a majority. We got a quorum. We are good. Thank you. I wish I could say that I will have donuts and coffee. I will have neither of those things. Second thing, I think the purpose of the meeting is what's on the agenda. There have been several requests to align on a shared vision again, not again, but like not in a pejorative sense, but like in this next chapter that we are entering together. The second is this discussion of the differences between their proposed master agreement and our proposed master. I have added to that list what Ms. Jones was suggesting around some context and table setting at the beginning. So we've got composition of who's going to be there. We've got purpose of the meeting. The last thing I wanted to just flag was process. I think one of the, I did my best to share this at our last meeting. This has been an enormously challenging set of things to navigate. And I think it's because people have different and strong opinions, and sometimes things have changed over time. What was clear at the last committee of the whole where we discussed this is that a majority of board members want to be able to work through this as a full board with their board. That's what we're doing. That's what we're showing up to do. They're choosing to respond to that, how they choose to respond to that. It is going to be challenging to negotiate with 7 people because we're not going to agree on things. There are things already in this discussion tonight that we did not agree on, and we haven't even gotten the other people in the room yet. And so what I wanted to do is just preview for all of you how I'm planning on handling that tomorrow. When there is differences of opinion on the board, I'm going to note them. I'm going to check that there is in fact that difference of opinion. And if there is, we're either going to vote to clarify what the majority thinks, or we're going to table the issue. But what I'm trying to distinguish from is us trying to move in multiple incompatible directions at once. Hopefully we don't have to do any of those things because we somehow have some real unanimity and clarity and consensus on the important points. But when there is disagreement, which I think is appropriate and healthy and part of what elected representatives are charged with doing, the way I want to handle that is I just want to be really clear for us and for them where we have board support for things and where we don't. And so again, I'm just trying to preview tomorrow so that as people get there and we work through it together, we're all on the same page. Ms. Bolton.
First and foremost, I would like us to talk about whatever the shared vision is by going through, if possible, the text of the original shared vision to see where we have consensus between their representatives and our full board. To me, that seems to be where we need to start our discussion, because I think we're going to probably be pretty similar to the process piece that you just mentioned. These people are not sending, unfortunately, their whole board. And because of that, I'm happy to talk to the 4 or 5 that are coming, but I'm not going to sit here as a board and show our division to them or the public at this juncture. I'm not going to do that. I don't think that's fair. I think it's disrespectful, frankly, that they're not all coming, but I can deal with that because the people they're sending are great, and I think they'll do a great job representing. But no, I'm not going to participate in a vote to show our division. I think your second idea of if we don't have unanimity, but by the way, unanimity is not something we always require, but I would just say we table it so we can talk about it again as a board. That's what I would suggest is the shared vision. That's where we kind of, besides the opening comments, we start with the shared vision, and then we don't have unanimity or whatever. We just table that section for us.
Thank you, Ms. Bolton. Other comments or questions about tomorrow? Superintendent.
I think the only thing that I would just like to just raise is as we are going through this process and the entire board is doing all of the negotiations around the agreement, the longer it takes us to get to consensus, it does back up what they're needing to do on the other end. So I just want to share that on behalf of just the work that's happened up until this point. I know the time is far spent at this time. So it's, I was hopeful that we would be able to determine what we agreed with or didn't agree with with the red line that we have, so that when we do go into the meeting tomorrow, we have some understanding already of where the team is as a team. If that's not the case, then, thinking through that, and then when is the time to come back together? Because again, our next meeting is the 11th. It sounds like our agenda is already full, and I know that they would, have some things that need to be worked through as well. So I just wanted to just raise that as just an area of something to be considered as well.
I think the request makes a lot of sense, Superintendent. And what I don't know is if an additional 15, 20 minutes on that tonight would get us there or not. But I think it's worth checking. I mean, when you and Mr. Hoying or the treasurer, are you able to say, here are the 3 most important issues you want to make sure we're clear on where there's board support or where there isn't? I think we clear that up now, or we at least try.
I think from our perspective, what is currently in the red line, and correct me if I'm incorrect, from our perspective, from the internal team, which includes us as well as our pre-K leadership, our DSS, so just a few other individuals as well, what's in the current, counter proposal or in the red line, we feel at this point is what we would be in agreement with. And what we think would be appropriate as we begin to move forward. So if that is not, but what we don't know is how close we are to being in sync with that, with where the board is on any of those things. And then calling out the specific piece that we referenced earlier, the treasurer did talk about that before in terms of what their representative and our treasurer as our representative talked about around the financial piece and how that component would look, taking into consideration some of the things that we already do collectively with some of the things that they already do as well. So that was just one of the things that we raised. So what's here, we believe is livable for us, and something that if it was agreed upon, it would be something that we could still move forward in continuing to grow the programs for our students.
Thank you, Superintendent. I mean, I can just speaking for myself, I'm curious, want to make sure everybody else gets a chance to share as well. I happen to agree with what Dr. Moffat had shared earlier, that I think 99% of this has my full support. I think the one thing that I would like to propose was that when it talks about the funding being based on enrollment, what I'd like to advocate for is that we do that. But we've also somehow set aside some amount that the preschool promise can use on quality improvement. And so I think if that is already in there, I just missed it. See, where is it? Where is it? I was looking on page 2, section C, where it says funding disbursements. And I didn't see the quality improvement piece there, but it may be elsewhere.
It's not written there, but if we can let the treasurer speak to that portion, because we talked about that in the last time we talked about this,
okay,
where it did actually show up. And that's the agreement that I'm talking about with the 2.
Okay.
So as assigned by that small group, Hector and I got together and came up with several different ways on how the money can be divided. We thought it was the most equitable thing to do is to come up with a version of the per pupil split. Because right now, both budgets far exceed the annual levy. We're dipping into that prior cash, and it's going to run out next year. So we have to figure out a way to live within that money or increase the money pot, okay? So I came up with different revisions. The last one we came up with, we took the levy value, subtracted out the special education costs for expansion of preschool, subtracted out the quality improvement for CPP.
So that is here.
It's in a document, it just hasn't been published yet because these 2 haven't seen my final version yet, but I can certainly walk through the draft.
No, I mean, I think first of all, the request the superintendent's making, I think is pretty reasonable, that we use the time we have tonight to see where there's support and where there isn't. With that as context, I certainly am very excited about what's here.
And I asked the treasurer, and she can bring it tomorrow in hard copy so that it can be discussed as a part of the conversation. Because while it's not necessarily written into the document, it is taking into consideration what has been shared by the smaller group that the concerns were.
Yeah. So can we hear from other people, like either, yes, you support the red line that's here, or whether you have any questions or concerns about it. Ms. Weinberg?
This might not be a very smart question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Is it actually redlined or is it blue lined on this document? Because I want to make sure that I'm looking at the right one. Okay, that's it. Thank you.
No, it's good. It's good. Mr. Morosky, is the version from the administration something that you would support?
It is.
And Mrs. Weinberg, is what's from the administration something you'd support? Great. And Ms. Jones?
I'm working on it.
Working on it?
Yeah.
Okay. And Ms. Bolden?
Yes.
Yes. And then Dr. Moffett?
So I'm almost there, but no. And I'm going to tell you why, because I still believe, first of all, it should be, whatever Jen has should be in this document. If it's not there, I'm not going to sign off on something that I haven't looked at. And then additionally, I want to ensure that this is about equity. And it feels to me like this is about equality. And I really want to understand that the step up to quality piece, because that seems as if that's an extra layer that they have that we don't have, and I don't see it in here. So if I can just get that, then, you know, I'll be better. And then I also would like to engage with them around the shared vision and what they think about this. This was just our opportunity based upon a small group from the board going and representing us, but I don't want to commit to this until I have actually had an opportunity to sit down and massage it and see what they're saying. So I'm almost there, but no, I'm not there based off of just limited information. So no.
President Lindy, if I could also just reiterate, this.
And then I want to get Mrs. Weinberg too, who wanted to get something in. We could go ahead and then we'll come, Mrs. Weinberg.
And in the midst of laughing, I'm sorry, I do want to apologize about that. I am almost there. I do need some clarification and I would like to engage. So I just wanted to add that in, that I need to hear a little bit more details, and I look forward to the conversation to make a decision.
Have there any questions for right now?
I don't, because I need that additional information. So.
Additional information we can provide this evening or not?
No, because I think it's going to take the opportunity to engage with them as well and hear what they have to say.
I just want to reiterate that this document has not been shared with them yet. So they would not receive it until after this meeting. So their first time reviewing it, because of course we wouldn't share it until we had this conversation. So their first time seeing it will be tomorrow. So I don't know that they've had opportunity to react to the responses from what they've already provided to us. So I just wanted to give that one more reiteration.
Okay.
This is on board docs.
It is on board docs now, but in terms of us sharing it with them prior to the conversation, we put it on board docs when we started talking about it right now. So I cannot
there's no
assume
way
that
they
they've
would've-
actually
Yeah.
seen it from there.
Yeah,
So
that's fair.
we'll forward it to them after we discussion.
Okay, so we got into this because we were trying to figure out, to the superintendent's point, could we find out if there is support for the current red/blue line version that we received that has not been sent yet to Preschool Promise, but that is posted on board docs. And I think what I heard was that there's a mix. We have several board members who support as is. There's several others who want to hear more from the other organization. And so I think that we have the answer on that at this point. So everybody knows who's going to be there. We know what the agenda is. We know what the process is going to be. Any last call for comments on this before we hit our last couple topics? Ms. Bolden.
I still think the real value tomorrow is the shared vision, especially since they've not seen this draft. In fairness to them, I think we can share that. I think that's good, but the real dialogue should be the shared vision, because that's where we're really going to know where we are or not.
Thank you very much. Okay, so we are on board matters. We have tackled one, we've tackled two because we pushed that up earlier. We have a third from Ms. Bolden.
Yes, very quickly, it could have been an inquiry update or what have you, but I have an interest, not surprisingly, that I've expressed before a couple of times, and I've been pleased with the progress just as to when we're going to, what's the timeline for the social studies curriculum. And I ask, knowing that the people at the state are thinking of evil things to be doing regarding curriculum, And also the fact that when I was out on the campaign trail, I was very adamant, as were other people, about our pride and in our social studies curriculum, and that we believe we have a progressive social studies curriculum that I'm sure is going to be made even more progressive. And I just want to make sure that we are, what the timeline is for our adoption or the process.
Thank you. So the social studies team right now is waiting for us to move through the budget process so that the social studies adoption becomes a part of that conversation. They're already ready, and of course they would love for us to go ahead and commit right now. However, we're just not in a position to commit at this time until we work through the budget process.
So that's what we're waiting for, is to see if whatever they need moving forward is in the money.
That is correct, because but there is no intention or expectation to detour from what we're doing right now in terms of our social studies standards and the way that we're using those standards in our district.
Thank you.
That was fast.
See?
Thank you.
Occasionally I can be.
Inquiries or updates, item M.
I only have one to share, and I hope that this will be a lighthearted share. I was looking forward to this meeting ending a little early because every night other than tonight, I am a staunch Bengals fan. But tonight, the Bengals are playing the Jaguars, and that is my original home team. So I have to support the Jaguars tonight and only tonight. So after we finish, the rest of us will be making sure that we will be supporting the home team. So just wanted to share that as an update as we're getting ready to end our meeting.
Loyalty and pride are wonderful things.
What is the score?
I have just one. I know there was some brief mention of this in the superintendent's email, but the superintendent was invited to a meeting with the mayor on a couple of important topics and extended an invitation to the vice president and to me. I was able to join by phone. I think this is just an opportunity. I think our bylaws have that we'll be provide an update at the next board meeting. This is the next board meeting, so we're providing that update. I think just of particular interest on my end, there is some real energy from at least the people in that meeting around collaborating with CPS to go after the chronic absenteeism issue that we're seeing in Cincinnati. It's not unique to Cincinnati. I think seeing this all over the country, but talk about an important issue. It was wonderful and exciting to hear interest. I think they were impressed with some of the data that the administration had already collected. There was some next step that's probably already happened. I'm sure I'm missing things from that meeting. Are there other things you would mention, Superintendent?
I don't think so. I think as I share it with the board, I was invited to come to the meeting and didn't really know all of the context at that point, but the context was around questions that were relevant to us as well. And so over the next several months, we will look to convene a working group to work through some of those things, to provide some information, feedback, follow-up to the board as we look to do some joint initiative kinds of work with the city. So the fact that they are engaged and want to have deeper conversation with us around things like chronic absenteeism, which was one of the things that was something that was asked about. Of course, there is concern about the gun violence in the community and how we might be able to partner on something like that as well. And of course, no surprise around the Public Safety Academy. And so just to share just those bullet points, because those were pretty much top of mind, that did intersect a little bit into talking about discipline. And the thing that I think is really important for us is that our updates and the way that we're doing our meetings now, we are able to point individuals back to board meetings that we've had that they can get information from. They can see the presentations that we're doing, and it answers a lot of questions that they may have about how we're doing our work in the district. So just to share that, and kudos to the board for that direction.
Any questions or follow-up from that meeting or any other inquiries or updates? Okay, hearing none, we're going to keep moving. Are there any assignments this evening? Mr. Morosky.
Thank you, President Lindy. Just two assignments. So the first to the administration regarding Lighthouse, to formally make that assignment to get that process going. We're renaming it. Looking at the community and again logging the policy committee's one suggestion of Dr. Odell Owens, and then Second part of that is to board members, email, general counsel, administration, suggestions you may have for names that are percolating around your brain. Then secondly, formal assignment to the administration to take the climate resolution that you should have in your inbox to see, feasibility, suggestions, and then to bring to policy committee that might be on January 19th at 9 a.m., but pending an organizational meeting, we'll see.
Any concern or dissent on those assignments? Other assignments, Ms. Bolden?
I just would like to repeat a previous assignment from the last time, which was when the preschool promise really outstanding annual report. They did publish demographics that indicated that we still have preschool deserts. And I think we assigned last time for our staff to look at their work and compare it to what we understand to be the demographics regarding preschool programming throughout the district. So I think that would be very helpful for us as we plan ahead regarding improvement and expansion. Thank you.
Any dissent or concern on that assignment? Ms. Jones?
No dissent.
Yep,
on that
you
one.
keep going. Yep.
Keep going. Okay. We did talk about, and I'm not sure if this is an assignment for our ladies in our office or for administration to locate the founding documents for Preschool Promise. I know we won't have them for tomorrow morning, but at some point it would be great if we could. And I would suggest that if any board members, probably maybe 3, I don't know if Mike, were you around when? Okay. Okay, we may be able to come up with some, just as a historical piece. We won't have them for tomorrow, obviously. So
I do think
it could be,
it might be even easier than that, because when the small group was meeting with their small group, general counsel prepared some historical documents that are already put together. It might be an e-version as opposed to a printed version, but we have the original levy language, the original shared vision, the next shared vision, and those are things that we could look at together.
okay, thank you.
Dr. Moffitt.
So I just forgot exactly what I was about to say. I did the board member Jones. Forgot what I was. Oh, I know what I was going to say. So we have been having our joint city council meeting, CPS city council meetings, and the vice mayor reached out to ask if January the 17th was able to be our next joint meeting. Her staff reached out. So look for that date. It's a Wednesday. Hold the date. I know I'm looking at board member Jones. I know you're going to miss us, but you can come back. Oh, well, maybe we can't do that date, but that was the date. It was either the 17th or the 18th, January. So I'll look and see, because I think it wasn't a conflict when I looked, so maybe the 18th. But they have already requested our next joint meeting. So just announcing it to you all now. I'm going to look it up to clarify. I could be wrong, but just hold the date. Let's see.
Thank you, Dr. Moffitt. I have one. Any others? This is just to recap from earlier. We were going to assign to the policy committee to look at whether there should be some formal principles around when we give statements for things like years of service. Not that we should write some necessarily, but to do some looking into how we've handled this in the past, what best practice is, and to figure that out in the next calendar year. Any dissent on that assignment? Okay, I think that covers us on assignments. Any kudos? Ms. Jones?
Yes. Sitting here looking at Mr. Lee Black as he sits out there, I just want to congratulate all our SCPA band members who received extensive honors in the state competitions. And I think there were either 2 or 3 students that maybe you can help me with that. I forgot. What was the 3 students that got? Great, wonderful. Wonderful.
Okay.
Yes.
That was it.
Yeah.
All right.
I wanted to say kudos to them and to their leader for preparing them to be a part of something so special. I know it's special. When I was in high school, I played the clarinet and I participated in the honors in that group where they state competition. I didn't win, no. So, but it's okay. Sorry.
That's fabulous. Thank you very much. Other kudos, Dr. Moffitt.
So that was the date. It was January the 17th. So the superintendent said that we do have a cow for that day. So is there another day? Would you all like me to suggest another day? They also suggested Western Hills High School as the location. So I don't know how that happened. They just wanted to suggest Western Hills. So do you all want the 18th, or are you willing to forego our cow for that day?
We can't, I think, forego our meeting. But I think if you wanted to suggest some, if it's too hard to do tonight, we can certainly do it by email with the board office. Mr. Morosky?
It's 3 meetings in a row, assuming policy is on January 19th, so.
Yeah, I would recommend getting the board office to do a doodle poll or something.
Say that one more time.
So I was going to recommend getting the board office to put a doodle together to figure out what some good options could be.
Well, all right, then it's coming.
Okay, so we have one last decision point for us, board. We had a number of items we were able to discuss during our executive session before the meeting. We have some items we did not quite get to. We said this was going to be a short meeting, and so we would adjourn into executive session 9:15. I'm good to go home. I'm good to stay here, depending on what a majority of folks would like to do. So can we just go down, starting with Ms. Komorowski, and I'm going to ask everybody, yes, I'm starting with Mr. Morosky, whether we should adjourn or whether we should recess.
Do I get to, am I making this decision in a silo? It's my decision?
Your vote.
I'm just one
You're
vote.
one.
You know, I'm fine with going home.
Okay. Mrs. Weinberg? Ms. Jones?
It won't be.
It has to be.
I say we adjourn but I have a recommendation.
Uh-huh.
And we've done this in the past,
Uh-huh.
but I think we should extend executive session for a half hour.
Come a little early on Monday?
Or
Yeah, I gotcha.
Yeah.
Ms. Bolton?
Yeah.
Oh my God, the next one?
I think we could extend.
Mike, please.
I think we could extend the next one rather than stay this evening, but we do have work to do that needs to be done.
It has to be done that day.
Or period. So I don't know if it's an extra 30 minutes or an extra 45 minutes.
So there's thank you. Mr. Craig? Recess or adjourn?
I'm fine with us adjourning and then adding the additional.
Dr. Moffitt?
I'm here, so I'd like to get as much done as we can. I do want to set a limit. 45 minutes is my top because I want to watch the game, so.
So I think we have a majority of folks who would like to adjourn tonight and then pick up with some extra time on Monday. So let's do that. And so having, yeah.
Oh, was it?
So having no other business before us this evening, I declare our meeting adjourned.